I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Welcome to today's episode. I have Jenny K. Parks of Jenny K. Quilts. She is a color expert. She has so many ways to access her. She's got YouTube, she's got blog, she's got her workshops, she teaches at guilds. There's so many things that she does out there in the quilty world to help us, what does she say? Leave quilts, not fabric. I'm so excited to chat with Jenny today, and I hope that you guys gain some insight and some wisdom into how to turn all your fabric stash into beautiful quilts that you can leave behind. So let's get into it. Hi, Jenny. How are you?
I am wonderful. Oh, wonderful. Very
Yay.
exciting day. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so excited too. And we kept having to postpone because you were sick for a long time. You had pneumonia?
Yes, I did. I
Oh
had
my
pneumonia.
gosh. Oh
I
my
had
gosh.
pneumonia. It was, but I would say this time around was much better than the last time. Last time I had it was after Market in 2015,
Oh,
and I had two kinds of pneumonia and a septic infection, and I was in the hospital for a week and on oxygen for 2 months. So
holy
this was
smokes.
much better.
You're like, this is a walk in the park.
Yeah, this is easy.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so sorry that you were sick, but I'm glad you're better and that you're
Thank
here
you.
with me
Thank you.
because I cannot wait to get to know more about you and just chat with you. So,
Yeah.
um, you are the head honcho, we'll say, of Jenny K Quilts. You're kind of renowned for your color, your color talks and talking to guilds
Mhm.
and all
Mhm.
that. And we'll get to that.
Okay.
But first, I want to know how you even got into quilting in the first place.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. And you say head honcho. I'm the only honcho. I'd like to have more
Right.
honchos with me, but I'm just the head one right now.
Yeah.
So I got into it. I was homeschooling my girls, and we
Mhm.
were going through like a home ec type of course, right? And making different things. Like you make a little apron and you try to cook bread, bake bread, and things like that. And the
Mhm.
next project that was coming up was quilted placemats. Now
Oh.
I've sewn. My mom sewed. I didn't sew a lot, but it was not unfamiliar territory, right? Sewing and putting things together. And my grandmother sewed. I remember going into her scrap bag when I'd stay there, visit her in the summers, and going into her scrap bag. And I took a she had taken a shirt, a flowery shirt. This is, I'm sorry, we're going to go back in the day, way back in the day. A very flowery puffed shirt
Mhm.
and cut the sleeves out. It was a really long, um, I don't know, this part of the sleeve was a tight and then it had a little poof. And
Oh,
so I,
yeah.
I I made a Barbie dress out of it. But, so like sewing is not totally foreign, and I'd made other things. I'd done hand embroidery, that kind of thing. But I
Mhm.
thought, I better make these quilted placemats so I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I went to Joann's, which may be disappearing now, who
Mm,
knows. I
I
went to
know. Makes me
Joann's.
sad.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And I just bought a range of colors. I found some colors I thought, oh, I really like these. I went from dark to light. Apparently, that's in my nature.
Hmm.
And I made the quilted placemats, and I thought, I really like this.
Mm.
I really like this a lot. So whenever we would go to the library, they would look around in the library, and I'd go to the quilting section of the library, and I would, like you may only check out 10 things in the same subject, right? So I'd come
Yeah.
up and stack all 10 things, and I didn't always have time to quilt, but I'd have time to sit and thumb through and then answer a question, sit and thumb through and do that. So
Hmm.
I was bringing everything home and reading everything that I possibly could. And then I would DVR again. Boy, we're gonna spend a lot of time going way back. I DVR all of the quilt shows.
Yeah.
Fonz and Porter's Love of Quilting,
Hmm.
Eleanor Burns, Simply Quilts when Alex Anderson was on there on HGTV and had Simply Quilts. And Martha Pullen, I would also watch her too because occasionally
Yeah.
she had quilt stuff along with her heirloom stuff. And it's just interesting. So I would do that. And then when I got time by myself, like leave mom alone now, I
Hmm.
would I would watch those. And I didn't get as much time to sit down and sew and quilt as I would like to, but that's how I got started. I started reading, and the very first quilt I made, a log cabin,
Mm-hmm.
was I watched on VHS Eleanor Burns making a log cabin. And that was my first one. And it probably was just like maybe 6 months after doing the quilted placemats. I'm kind of like, I am all in. I'm gonna learn how to do this.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I got started. I was just
Wow.
fascinated with the things that you could do because I in the it was just blocks, right? You just put
Mm-hmm.
blocks out in kind of a grid and stow them together. And
Mm-hmm.
then you change the background. Each one had like you had to get a certain measurement, use those blocks in there, and then each one had a different colored backside to it.
Mm-hmm.
And but I realized I was arranging the color going from light to dark and thought, I love this. I love this.
Mm-hmm.
This has so much potential. I was
Yeah.
very excited
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. And I mean, Joanne's in the 90s. Can we just talk about that for 2 seconds? Because that was like my happy place.
Yes.
Like I was
Yes.
homeschooled too, so I totally
Okay.
get that
Okay.
vibe. Like we're always looking for stuff to do, right? My
Yeah.
mom's
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
been super crafty, sewing everything on the planet.
Mm,
Quilting didn't come to us until like 2016, 2017 timeframe. But anyway,
mhm.
I just I mean, I know the quality of the fabric kind of went downhill over time, but
Yeah,
like just getting to go in and touch everything and see all the different colors of fabrics and all the different types of fabrics and
I
just
know.
the wonderland of it all. So, ugh,
Ah.
like my little homeschool girl heart was like,
Yes, I think we're the same vibe. Because you go into someplace like that and you see all the potential,
hmm
all of
yeah.
these things. I remember as a little girl, when my mom would go shopping, we would go to Cloth World, and
Oh,
it had round. It didn't have like the rows. I don't know if
hmm
you know. It had the round things with
yeah.
two sets, and you'd go and hide under those.
hmm
You go and look at all the buttons. Look at all
hmm
these buttons, and
yeah.
I loved that. In fact, one of my after school jobs in high school was working at Sofro Fabrics.
Oh,
And that was way back. So Sofro, that was late 80s.
okay.
Sofro was bought by, I think, Fabric Inc. or something like that. And
Hmm.
they're the parent company of Joann's.
Okay.
So that, yeah, really was an after school job. If you want to see crazy people, try the day before Halloween in a fabric store. That
Yeah.
has
That's just
nothing on Kohl's on Black Friday. And I've worked both. I can do anything in retail now.
right.
But those people are panicked, absolutely
Yeah.
panicked. But it was fascinating because I really got to learn, um, quality fabric. What does
Yeah.
good fabric feel like?
hmm
How does it behave? What does it do? How can you tell on the shop floor what's a better fabric and what's a not so good fabric? And
hmm
so I really appreciate those days being able to
hmm
do that and kind of think in fabric. And I'll tell you this, I can smell raw silk on the floor. I can smell it.
really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I smell. What is that? There's a silk over there. I'm going.
Whoa.
So
I
it's
didn't even
just
realize it had a smell.
it does. It does. It
Okay.
has a smell. It has
That
a
makes
smell.
sense. That
Yeah,
makes
which I
sense.
love. I love
Yeah.
that smell.
That's
Or
so
the
cool.
smell of starchy fabric in the morning.
Mm,
Or
yeah.
linen. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
all so nice.
I
It's
love
like, oh,
linen.
yeah. Ooh, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun to grow up that way. And I'm sure,
Mhm,
do your
mhm.
girls sew now? Like, have they
They
continued at
don't.
all?
They
No?
don't. Just that they're just kind of in different places in their
Yeah.
lives right now.
Yeah.
So, and that's totally fine. That's
Yeah.
totally fine. I can sometimes stuff like that skips a generation. And your
hmm
show, not your granny's quilt show. I actually am a granny.
Yeah.
I have two grandkids. And but it's not my granny's quilt show. There we go.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
It's a mindset.
yeah, and so sometimes things like that'll skip. But I think if my daughters were around more, they might, pick it up and say, "Oh, I want you to try this," or "Let's do this," or something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not like they're no way, I hate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
I mean, I didn't start like my mom literally since she was a kid has been sewing and she would
Mhm.
sew all the time when I was growing up, but I didn't pick it up until my friends forced me to learn how to quilt. They were like, "You're going to start making a quilt." And I was like, "No, I don't sew." They're like, "Yes, you do." Like, sit down. Like they made me. It was great. Um
Oh,
so
bossy.
yeah, and my mom was like, "Oh, now you sew?" I'm like, Listen, Michelle, it's different." But
This peer
so
pressure. I succumb to peer pressure, Mom.
yeah, I was like, my friends, they were like basically holding me at rotary cutter point, like, you will go through this. It was fine. It was fine, but it was really hard and scary, but I did it, and here I am
Yeah.
with all I do is quilting. So anyway, um, well, that's awesome, and hopefully, yeah, maybe one day they'll pick it up, but or
Yeah.
maybe a grandkid will pick it up, but
Mhm, mhm.
it's it's just interesting to like see where it goes in families because sometimes it's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, every generation, my grandma, my great grandma, my mom, me, and then
Mhm,
sometimes it's like, nope, it's just me. Like I'm the only one.
mhm,
So
mhm.
it's just interesting to kind of figure out those dynamics and like see where they lie in a
Yeah.
family.
Well, I thought that my grandmother had also quilted because
Mm,
I had inherited some of her stuff,
hmm.
and somebody said, "Oh, my mom was saying, this is Grandma's quilt. Take care of Grandma's quilt." Like, okay, so I'm thinking she made a quilt,
Yeah.
and I pulled it out and I was actually hanging it up for display. And my grandmother taught me to embroider when I would stay with her in the summers,
Mm,
and she's very particular about embroidery.
hmm.
And saying, "Oh no, it has to be like this. It has to be as nice on the back as it is on the front. It has to
Mm,
be, oh, no, rip that out and do it again."
hmm.
And so she taught me how to embroider. And I'm looking at this quilt, and it has embroidered baskets. It was probably mid 70s kind of thing. So
Okay.
you can kind
Uh-huh.
of picture
Yeah.
these embroidered baskets in blocks. So I
Uh-huh.
think it's like 9 blocks and 9 different baskets. And I'm
Okay.
looking at the embroidery on that basket and thinking, this is not my grandma's. My grandma did not make this. She would not put up with this. I mean, like, no, she didn't make it. So what I think happened with that is that she was really active in her church. And I
Hmm.
think maybe like she won the quilt, but it wasn't
Oh,
actually her work.
gotcha.
Yeah,
She
because
owned it, but it wasn't hers.
exactly.
Okay.
She owned it. So
Okay.
that's my quilt. You be careful with my quilt, right?
Hmm.
That's totally makes sense, but she did not make that quilt. If she
Whoa.
did embroider it, she's changed her tune. Because she
You're
wouldn't
like,
let me get
Grandma?
away with a lot of those stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Grandma,
Yeah.
put down the whiskey. No.
Yeah. No, not that particular grandma. Not that one. Pardon me.
No, that's funny. I know. And I think like my mom would sew with her grandma because she would go spend summers on the farm. They had a farm and
Nice.
it's still in the family, but she has this yo-yo quilt
Oh
they
yeah.
made together because when my great grandma was sick, my mom was the one who took care of her when she was like doing chemo treatments and all this stuff. So
Mm.
as a little girl, like I'd go with my mom and hang out and we'd be with grandma and they'd be just sitting there sewing yo-yos and I mean, my mom has a box of just the cutout circles of to make more yo-yos and she has a bunch of
Yeah.
loose yo-yos and they have the yo-yo quilt top and it's huge
Uh-huh.
and she's just like, what do I do with all this? I'm like, you hang on to it for dear life. Like maybe one day we'll sit and make more yo-yos together, but like you don't get rid of that. She's like, no, I won't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just it's just interesting the things that it's like, nope, that's her grandma. It's like we know that that's
Mm. Mhm.
hers and was from her and so it's just interesting like and when we don't label our quilts, this is what happens. People don't know where they came from, they don't know who made it, they don't know when, they
Yes.
don't know why or how. It's like I'm so bad. I mean, this is me speaking from the land of I don't do this and I should, um but labeling and I'm actively like that quilt doesn't have a label, the ones above it don't have a label. I'm like I want to go through and like just make labels and I'll just sew them on by hand on the back sides just because like I want my quilts to have labels. I want like my kids and my family like once I pass away, hopefully a long time from now, knock on wood, but like to know like, oh, she
Mhm.
did make this one or this one was gifted and it has a label on it. And so, because my mom's made me a couple quilts,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, it's just one of those things where these get passed down and you're like, this isn't my grandma's. Like you just happen to know
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
meticulousness of her work to be able to
Mhm.
spot that that's not her quilt, not
Mhm.
one she made. She may have owned it, but it wasn't hers. And but like there's no label on it. So how would you know that like it
Right.
wasn't Barbara from church who made
Right.
it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's just kind of an interesting thing.
I
And like, um, I went to, well, in QuiltCon last year, I went to the like, what's it called? Like the historical quilt, whatever. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I can't remember the name.
it's
But and
okay.
they were handing out like pre-printed labels to put on quilts because they're like, label your quilts, please. They were like begging everybody, like, please put
Oh, yeah.
labels on your quilts. And like basically kind of like shaming people, not really, but like
Yeah.
you label your
Encourage,
quilts. I'm like,
prompting,
yeah,
encouraging.
prompting, encouraging. Thank you. Yes, positive spin. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't. Like, I ask clients, like, when I make them a quilt, like, do you want me to add a label? I think it's important. And they're like,
Mhm.
no. I'm like, "Mm, okay, well,
Mm,
makes
mm.
me mad." But I still put a tag on it that has my business name because I'm like, well, you're gonna know where this quilt came from. So
Oh, all right. I have to show you because I'm the same way with labeling. I
yeah.
started at the beginning labeling, and actually, I
Mhm.
would take like the log cabin block quilt that I made. I did. I made a little log cabin,
Mhm.
and then log cabin block, and then I applicated onto another spot that had my information on it, so people would
Oh,
know. But let me show you what I did for my business. Hang on, let me grab these real
yeah,
quick.
yeah.
Look what I have
I
right
will.
here. I went on Spoonflower, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, all right. And I had these made, the Spoonflower, and I just put it has my business and
Oh
all
yeah.
that stuff on it and all that information. And then I fused it onto one side of Heat and Bond Light. And
Oh,
so all I need to do is write on it with a pencil or pen,
yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
a fabric pen.
Yeah.
And then I do like a little, I take this little this green thread, lime green.
Yeah.
Lime green's a big thing for me. I'm just gonna say that. And oh, here, I'll give you an even better shot. There we go. And
Beautiful.
then I do kind of a big stitch around it, appliquing it on, and then I
Uh-huh.
fuse it on.
That's so smart. Oh, I
So it
love
all
that.
stays.
Yeah.
But you notice I have where are these? These are in a baggie. These are not on my quilts.
Right?
So close. I need
Yeah.
to just do that. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do a pinky promise. And we'll do that. We'll do that. And we'll get together. I
Okay.
mean, and work on that and make that
Yeah.
happen. Because you're right. We need to
Yeah.
label it. I need to
Yeah.
label it and
Yeah.
say where stuff is from. And I mean, because if I
Yeah.
don't write it down,
Hmm.
what was
Yeah.
that?
Right?
I don't
Um,
know.
like all these
Exactly.
people who keep quilt trackers, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Unless it's like in my house physically because I still have it because I've made it for myself.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Uh-huh.
I guess I could go through like my different like Etsy order client, Etsy clients or whatever and see what quilts I've made. I just make so many quilts for other people. I'm kind of like
Hmm. Hmm.
done next, which
Right.
it's
Right.
not for me. So I don't I mean, I'm happy that I've made it for them and I'm happy that they're happy, but it's
Hmm.
not something I'm not like retaining it. I'll remember them eventually, something will come up and be like, "Oh yeah, I made a quilt like that," or like, "Oh, I worked with this kind of fabric because somebody wanted a memory quilt," or whatever.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
but yeah, the people who keep spreadsheets, I'm like, bow down.
Yeah.
My friend Miranda, she keeps a spreadsheet of her quilts, and I'm like, girl, I'm like, can you just like do that for me? She's like, no, absolutely not. I'm like, yeah, okay, just thought
Mm,
I'd ask.
just checking. If
Yeah.
I make you a quilt, can you do that for me?
She's like, no,
Can
because I
we
can make my own
trade?
quilts. I'm like, you can have free long arming for life. I don't know.
Well, you know that's interesting too, the different ways of doing things. I have learned a couple years ago, I learned that I have dysgraphia. I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
if you're familiar
Yeah.
with that at
I
all,
was a
but
teacher, so
okay,
yeah,
okay. So
yeah.
for audience, people listening,
Hmm.
it is like think physical dyslexia. So
Hmm.
take the word bed, B-E-D. I know what a bed is. I know what bed is supposed to look like. I can read bed. I have no problem. I can spell bed, B-E-D. But if I am writing it,
Hmm.
sometimes, especially if I'm stressed, it might come out D-E-B.
Hmm.
Gotta erase and do that again.
Yeah.
So that affects, and it's when I'm typing too.
Mm.
I I
Okay.
I mean, you remember that scene in You've Got Mail where he's deleting, going back, delete, 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 delete.
Hmm.
I do that a lot. I do that a
Hmm.
lot. So I'm realizing that impacts my pattern writing abilities, my
Oh,
speed, which I can write patterns, my speed that I can write newsletters. It
yeah.
affects that. It really
Uh-huh.
does. I had to factor that in. The other thing that I learned just a couple weeks ago is that I also have dyscalculia, which is
Oh,
sometimes paired with dysgraphia.
yeah.
And dyscalculia is basically it's like a different wiring in your head that you can't quite process numbers the same way everybody else processes numbers. And
Yeah.
I thought it was just maybe I'm not as smart or I'm not as quick or
Yeah.
I need to memorize it or something like that. But like I can't do math in my head,
Mm,
not the same way other people can.
yeah.
I can't, you want change for that? Oh no, I'm sorry. I have to read what the
Mm,
register says in order to give you count back change? No, I
yeah.
don't think so.
He's
That's
like, I don't
not
do that.
that's someone else. That's not happening here.
Yeah.
And just different ways of thinking about numbers and remembering numbers. In fact,
Hmm.
oh man, this so like a few years back, we were at Costco and I wanted to use my debit card to get something, you know, this on my own and not on the
Yeah.
shopping list and whatever. And I wanted to use my debit, and I couldn't remember the pin number. I
Oh
couldn't
no.
remember it. And I'm like telling my husband, why can't I remember this number? I can't
Yeah.
remember a number unless it has a story with it.
Oh yeah.
It has to have some sort of meaning. It has to be there, or it's not in my head. It's gone.
Yeah.
And so that affects my pattern writing as well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Very challenging to write patterns and to edit it and to figure out like I can't do it. I can write the preliminary ones down, but go back and look at it, I can't do it. And then
Yeah.
the accounting, oh, I cannot tell you how many tears were shed and panic attack. I mean, literal panic
Yeah.
attacks had
Yeah.
in dealing with accounting. The panic attacks is also part of the dyscalculia in that
Hmm.
this emotional panic because you can't answer this question right away.
Yeah.
Come on, did you file that? Where is that? And you're like, I don't
I
know.
don't know. I
Hang
don't
on, I
know.
have to
Yeah.
go figure it out. But yeah,
Yeah.
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 So
Oh my
that
gosh.
it's interesting too to think about. And I thought this was the same way for everybody. I just needed to learn it. I just need to push through. And
Hmm.
now understanding that, you know, I am smart.
Hmm.
It's that this way doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So find a way that works for me.
Yeah.
I've spent too much time saying I need to shove myself into something
Right.
instead of saying, where's the thing that's going to fit me? I have a friend that I love to go clothes shopping with because you try on something and you say, what do you think?
Hmm.
That dress is not your friend. We need to find another one that's nicer to you.
Oh,
And
okay.
if you think about it that way, right? It's not
Yeah.
my fault
No.
that my shape isn't how I want it to be. It's I need to find a dress that works better for me,
Yeah.
not I need to adapt myself to the dress.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's been kind of
Yeah.
relieving the stress and everything. But yeah, tracking something on a spreadsheet,
Yeah.
I'm gonna need a minute.
Yeah. You're like, I'm sweating already and I'm not even doing it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Right? I'm already
Wow.
stressed. I'm already tense.
Yeah. But knowing that now, like having that information about yourself, does that allow you to now think back to your past self and have grace for all those times that you were mean to yourself?
It does. It
Good.
does. And actually thinking for now, and this is gonna make me kind of tear up because in school, spelling and
Yeah.
penmanship, that's another thing, dysgraphia. I
Mhm.
try to write beautifully, but unless I am in a beautiful place, my mind is at peace. And so
Mhm.
I struggle with it. It looks like I'm taking the pencil and just going
Mhm.
because my hand won't do it. I
Yeah.
can embroider beautifully. I
Right.
can do all kinds of things on machine, but the handwriting. But yeah, so handwriting and spelling and then math. Those are
Yeah.
the two biggest things. And I always felt like I was a failure. I
Yeah.
remember you know, sometimes in class, like, oh, I got a D. Phew. Okay, I just
Right.
made it. I just got the D.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember a lot of things like that and
Mhm.
thinking it wasn't me.
Nope.
Oh
Nope.
gosh. Yeah, I did not expect this to happen. Do you do this to everybody? No.
Yes, I do.
But you know, it wasn't me. It
Yeah.
was me, but it's not that I am a
It's not your
what do I
fault.
I'm not a lesser person
Right.
because I can't do that,
Right. It
you know.
doesn't change that you
Right.
have intelligence. You can grow, you can learn. It just
Right.
looks different. And
Right.
coming at, I was an educator for 8 years in third grade, and that's such a time
Oh,
when there's
yeah.
like expectations ramp up so high for
Yes.
kids. And I had several students who had like dysgraphia, they had dyslexia, they had, and it
Mhm.
was in a time too when they were still kind of like, well, we don't call it dyslexia anymore. You're not allowed to diagnose dyslexia. And I'm like, but what it's still there. Like just because you don't want to call it that doesn't mean that it's not
Gosh.
doesn't exist.
Right, right.
And same with dyscalculia. Like I've had students with all of it, and
Mhm.
just being able to be a person, and because of the climate we're in and knowing that
Mhm.
we have these diagnoses, we have this information, and there's something we can do about it in terms of setting accommodations and not blaming the kid for something that's not it's not up to you how your
Right,
brain was developed in the womb. It's not up
right.
to you how your brain interacts with different information, printed letter, the, you know, text interaction as far as like seeing
Mhm.
written numbers, seeing written letters, like that connection. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I my heart just goes out to you. And I'm so glad you know it
Yeah,
about yourself now so that you
I know,
can
right?
go back in your mind to those younger bits of pieces and parts of yourself and just give that little girl a squeeze and say, "It's
Yeah,
okay." Like, "It's okay.
yeah.
It's not
Absolutely.
you." Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think I need to find a better way, a different way to do patterns, to do
Mhm.
pattern writing. You can't be in the quilt business without having patterns to sell.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just not going to happen. So I need to come up with better ways. What's going to work for me and make
Yeah.
sense to me
Mhm.
and go that way. But also, I think that I didn't put my Kleenex right by me. I should have
Oh, sorry.
apparently.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make
No,
you
no,
cry.
you're fine. You're fine. Uh, that's people often comment on my vulnerability when we do stuff. So,
Me too.
um, I think too, but it's helped me to think a little bit differently
Mhm.
about things, like
Mhm.
the techniques that I have for binding.
Mhm.
Binding, I is one of my big, really popular classes that I do, and I got a course for it. And I think that because I look at things a little bit differently than other
Yeah.
people do. I'm trying to find, okay, how can I make this work for me every time and not feel like it's upside down and backwards and, whatever.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so it's made me think differently. So I think I've developed some different techniques to be
Right.
able to do it.
Well,
So
and then
I
it's gonna
think
speak to those people who maybe struggle
exactly,
with those things as well, and maybe they don't
exactly.
know that they've got these things going on in their
Right,
brains,
right.
but they find your stuff and go, "Oh, this makes so much
That makes
sense now."
sense. Right,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I can come at it from a unique perspective, and I think that's good. That's
Yeah.
beneficial. Yeah,
That is
yeah.
because it allows that information to reach more people. And
Mhm,
I think that's
mhm.
ultimately what, because I think some people get all in a tizzy about like, "Oh, we're over diagnosing or we're over like we're babying kids." It's like, okay, well, not like things have been put in place in the education system, especially,
Mm,
but just in our world because we know more now and we're able to
yes.
say, "Oh, not everybody's being reached by this one method. So let's look at
Right.
how can we make it more accessible to everybody?"
Right.
And it's just like, people talk about this new math. It's not new, it's always been there. We're just giving access
Mhm.
to the different ways you can get to the same answer. There's not just
Mm.
one right way. There's one right answer, but there's not one
One
path
right
to
way,
get
yeah.
there.
Yeah, and
And
it's interesting too, because I was reading different things like as a kid, what should you do to better accommodate a kid with these things? And
uh-huh.
one of them was like, don't give time limits, or they had
Mhm.
some different examples. And part of me was thinking, you know, I don't know that I want the standards to change to
Right.
adjust to me. Does that kind of make sense? Because like we have a thing, right? When you type a business letter and you
Mhm.
send it out, it should be spelled correctly. It should be, all these are standards that we have. So maybe
Mhm.
you need a different way to get there,
Mhm.
but this is still the goal that you need to reach.
Right, and
You know?
ultimately, especially and I'm, again, coming from the education world, the standards are still there, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's all about finding like, it's not just a straight direct path to the answer all the time
Hmm.
for every single kid, so it's
Hmm.
about the accommodation is about modification is where you change the standard for the person, so that's with, like,
Right.
severe learning
Right.
disabilities or
Right.
severe disabilities and otherwise. But for somebody with dysgraphia or somebody with dyscalculia, like, you can still get there
Hmm.
to the, main standard, the normalized standard,
Hmm.
um, and you just might need a different path. You'll still get there but we're
Right.
gonna just like we're gonna go this way instead, or we're
Right.
gonna go
Right.
this way instead, you know,
Hmm.
instead of the straight across kind of like,
Hmm.
and not to say that one's better than the other or they're just different. And
Right.
um so yeah, I think having accommodations for yourself just helps you work
Yeah.
with the challenges that you have, acknowledging that it's there,
Hmm.
giving yourself the grace to do things the
Hmm.
way you need to do them.
Hmm.
And who cares how anybody else does it? That's like,
Right.
and it goes for quilting too. It's like the
Yeah.
quilt police can sit down. We don't need your whoop whoop sirens to come in at like people can make quilts however they want to make quilts.
That's right.
Nothing disqualifies it from being a quilt unless it's not a quilt, like unless it's not layered with,
Hmm. Something in
like
the middle. Yeah.
the very basic fundamentals of having, a backing, a batting and a top
Hmm.
and being bound at the seams if you want, like, or at the
Hmm.
edges if you want. You can serge the edges. You can just leave them raw if
Yeah.
that's the aesthetic you're going for.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
there's so many things, but it's still a quilt because it's a three-layered thing, right?
Right. Right.
That's stitched together. And so anything else goes. Anything else
Right.
can be a possibility. And so trying to say that my quilt isn't a quilt because your quilt is a quilt, even though they
Hmm.
have the same basic
Hmm.
fundamentals, it's like same thing. It's like, "Oh, you're not smart." No, you're smart. You just need to get to those things in a different way than what
Right.
quote unquote normal people do. So,
Absolutely. And I tell the quote police they can just kiss my shiny metal thimble. I don't care what they say. I don't care. I don't care. And I
yeah,
think too, it's given me different ways to organize. Like if I'm doing a scrap quilt, I can't just pull from the bag and do whatever. For me, I have to have some kind of order. Some people can pull, cut all the blocks and pull from the bag and put it together. Me, I have to have some sort of pattern, some sort of color order to follow, but it'll
yeah,
still look random. But that's what works best for me.
yeah,
And some things about quilting, like we've inherited a lot of stuff. Our four quilters had specific ways that you had to do things, right? They had,
yeah.
rip it out till it's perfect and different kinds of attitudes about it. And we don't have to have those now.
Mm,
We're not in a fabric famine. May I
no,
just say, there's
no,
plenty around, and you
so
can
much.
find some more of that fabric. I'm pretty sure you can. I mean, maybe not everything, but you
Yeah.
can come pretty darn close. And we don't have to have those same standards, the same aesthetic, the same view on it. I
Hmm.
There were some friends of mine, a friend of mine, who she passed away a few years ago, but
Mm.
she learned to quilt in the oldest quilt guild in the US in Massachusetts, I believe.
Oh.
I know, right? So that's where she started quilting, and again, we're way back in the day, way back in the day. But she said she was interested in doing like art quilts, and she went to the B, and on one it was a gymnasium, and on one side of the gymnasium were the hand quilters,
Oh.
and on the other side of the gymnasium were the machine quilters. Oh.
Oh, okay.
And in the middle were three art quilters.
Mm.
And it was so fascinating to me, the divide, because they would say, well, it's not actually a quilt unless you do it by hand. And my thought, I mean, your mom, she was making all those yo-yos and
Yeah.
stuff. That's
Yeah.
awesome by hand. But
Hmm.
my thought is, if I had a sewing machine, I'd be using that sewing machine for
Hmm.
whatever I can get my hands on, right?
Right.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be done one way or the other, but
No.
just that divide that, no, this is the way it has to be. Well, there is no has to,
Right.
right? Except for the standard that you talked about, two pieces of fabric with batting in the middle and stitched through in some way or another.
Yeah.
That's a quilt.
Yeah.
And it's that thing too where we compare, like, because this affects my free motion. I really struggle with free motion because my
Mm.
hands don't always do what I think I want them to do. I
Yeah.
sometimes I can get it right, maybe a
Mhm.
glass of wine. I can get it,
Relax.
yeah, relax. I can do it right. But what I realized I was doing, especially when long arms started to become much more popular, right? And
Mhm.
people would have them in their homes, and stuff was, especially with the modern quilts, right? It's uber quilted, over quilted. There's so much quilt,
Mhm.
and the quilting is the point. I thought, I I have to learn how to do this. And I
Right.
I would struggle and struggle. And I realized what I was doing is I was comparing my weaknesses to
Hmm.
somebody else's strengths
Right. Yeah.
instead of saying, okay, what are my strengths and how can I push in there? How can I
Yeah.
do better with my strengths? What do I love? What am I passionate about? And
Hmm.
let them have their strengths. That's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
What do I do? What can I do? And I think quilters, we always do that, right? We
Hmm.
are displaying something, showing something, and we're comparing ourselves to what somebody else did.
Yeah.
Always. We are always doing that. At least I am. I don't know. Am I all alone?
No, no, I
I
think
totally do that.
no, I think you're right because as a long armor, like, yeah, I'd see all this custom
Mhm.
quilting and like, yeah, the heavy, heavy quilting and the
Yeah.
beautiful, like
Oh,
just motifs that people can make. And I've just not, that's not my strength. I can
mhm,
do
mhm,
good, like meander, loopy swoops, whatever. Like that's, I'm fine with that. But
mhm,
the like super detailed, like
mhm.
fancy motifs that people I like I can't make a feather to save my freaking life. Like I don't care. I've practiced so many times. I've practiced
Oh, yeah.
on my domestic machine. I've practiced on my long arm. I've practiced on smaller long arms that are lighter cuz like of course I got the biggest beefiest model that APQS has because I'm like, well this is a business. I need it to like
Right, of course.
hold up to a ton of work and it's she's oh, I love her. Anyway, um and that's not what my machine is designed for.
Mm,
She's
mhm,
designed for edge to edge, computerized.
mhm,
Um, and you can do I know people who have my same machine, but they don't have it computerized, so they don't have all the extra equipment attached
mm,
to the carriage. Make
mhm.
she's my machine is 46 pounds. She's a big girl. Like, so I've just had to step back and go, that's just not the thing I do. And that's
Mhm,
okay. It doesn't mean I'm bad or that I'm not a real quilter or that I'm not a good
mhm,
quilter. Like, I'm
mhm,
really good quilter. Like,
mhm.
not to toot my own horn, but I've worked really, really hard to hone the skills that I'm good at because I'm building quilts for customers all the time. So my seam allowances and my trimming and my measurements have to be really good.
Yeah.
And then to load their quilt and long arm it, I have to be really good at like understanding the assignment as far as picking a pantograph and setting the scale and size of it and knowing whether a color thread is going to be a good fit versus just white thread. And
Mhm,
those things, I'm really good at them. And again, it's because I've worked on it
mhm,
for 5 years now. Like it's been the thing that I've focused on.
mhm.
And so I think you're right. Like, don't, like, I'm not going to look at my flaws and then go compare them to somebody's master achievements
Right, right.
and be like, well, I'm just a bad quilter. I'm not. I'm really good at the things I'm good at.
Mhm, mhm.
And, like, you're good at the things you're good at. And so I think when we stop comparing ourselves and go,
Yeah,
what lights me up? What makes me happy? What do I
yeah,
enjoy about this process? And
yes,
again, I don't enjoy free motion quilting. I don't like it.
yeah,
So I don't do it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I can, but I don't wanna.
And it's not that you use that as an excuse for not learning how to do
No,
things. Like
no.
I took a Hawaiian embroidery, a Hawaiian applique class, those beautiful
Oh,
Hawaiian
mhm,
things, and it was just on a pillow. And I'm about a third of the way through, and I'm realizing I think it's that little tiny work.
mm,
I struggle with that little
yeah,
tininess of it, and it just was kind of making my shoulders hunch up and really stressed out. And I ended up taking it back to the teacher who was my friend, the teacher of the class. And I said,
mhm,
you know what? I've tried this. This is not for me. Would you like to finish this? Because she admired the colors and everything. Would you like to finish this one? And she took it and finished it. I'm
yeah,
like, No, okay, I've tried that. That's not for me. That's okay.
yeah,
I appreciate the people who do it. That's awesome. No, no,
yeah,
not for me.
yeah.
Yeah, let's move
There's a
on.
huge difference too in, like, being able to I've tried it, I gave it my best shot, this
There you go.
isn't for me,
Yeah.
and that's okay, and, like and then not yucking on it, not being like, "This is stupid," just because you're not good at it or just because it's not your thing, like,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
find and that's kinda where the quilt police come in.
Mm.
Shut your mouths. Um, but it's like, just because I don't like something, I'm never gonna shit on somebody doing free motion quilting and that being their
Right.
jam. Good for you. then
Right.
do it.
Yeah.
Get really good at it. Like, I
Yeah.
love that for you.
Mhm.
It's just not my thing, and that's
Mhm.
okay. And
Mhm.
same thing, like I've tried all these different hobbies, different crafts, whatever. Crochet stuck and quilting stuck, and that's it. And like
Uh-huh.
I can do other stuff, but it's not really where my love lies. And so
Right. Right.
I think being really careful about how we approach and talk about the different aspects in the quilting world, right? There's so
Mhm.
many different techniques. There's so many different ways to approach it. There's so many different ways that people love to do things. So
Mhm.
why can't we all just like doing things how we like doing them without somebody coming in and being like, well, I don't like the way you did that. It's like, well, it's not for you, so I don't care. It's like seems like a
That's
bad
fine that
attitude,
you
but
don't
at the
like it.
same time, it's like, okay, well, it's not for you, so you don't have to like it, which is so
Mhm.
great. So great.
So let me ask you, but do we really have other people coming and saying that, or is it us? Seems to
Um,
me like the more most I get, I don't know. You answer the
yeah.
question.
No, I mean, well, um I think it doesn't happen as much anymore because I think I've said it enough times that it has stopped people from coming at me.
Hmm.
But there's been times where it's mm, like you should have done it this way, or people come in and say things, and I'm like, okay, like I don't give it much time and thought, or
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't feel the need to explain myself to anybody.
I like that. I like that.
And think like I used to be an over explainer because, anxiety, right?
Hmm.
And I'd
Hmm.
be like, oh no, but I'd want to, but my husband would always stop me
Mm.
because I take everything. If I like feel stressed about a response I get from somebody, or like, am I misreading this? Like, I'll feel emotional about it, and he'll be like, I don't understand what your problem is. Like in the most loving way, he'll be like, why are you stressed about that? And I'm like, well, but this. He's like, but are you reading it in an assumed voice, or are you just reading it from a neutral zone? He's like, take
Ooh,
away your emotion from it.
like that.
Pretend like there's no emotion in it. It's just you're just reading words. And so I'd go back and read
Mhm.
the comment or the email or whatever and be like, "Oh." He's like, "Yeah, now
Mm.
try again." Just and again, he's not that bossy. He's just like asking me questions like, "How how are you perceiving this? Because I'm not perceiving it the same way you are." He's like, "Again, it's not about my work and my thing, but because I'm removed from it, I can see that it's kind of innocuous if you look at it from
Mm. Mhm.
a removed perspective." And I'd go back and look and be like,
Mm.
"Oh, you're right. This is kind of harmless. And it's just this person needed to get out whatever, stress they're feeling. And it's not really about me."
Mhm.
And then I could respond and say, "Gosh, I'm so sorry that you're feeling this way." Or I could just say, "Thanks for the feedback." Or I could just say, "Okay," with a smiley face. And that usually, because what are they going to say to that?
Mhm.
Um, and I think now I can take things on, and I don't like, again, I think I've been pretty outspoken in saying like, you can try to police me, but it's not going to hold any weight in
Mm.
my court
Mhm.
unless I've done something wrong. But I will be the first person to say, "Oh my god, I messed up and I'm so sorry,"
Yeah. Yeah.
because I can feel it in my body, right?
Mm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I think sometimes we try to police ourselves and talk to ourselves in a way that makes us feel like other people aren't going to like our work. So then we decide,
Yes.
and then the comments might sting because you're
Yeah.
already anticipating and you're
Yes.
hearing them, you're hearing comments, or you're hearing, yeah,
Mhm.
feedback in
Mhm.
a negative way because you're already expecting it to be negative. Whereas if
Right.
you're just like, I don't care, I like it, and that's all that matters,
Mhm.
anything anybody says doesn't really matter.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yes. So no, that's really good. And I think probably because you and we're in a little different space in quilting, but you
Mhm.
have to hand stuff over to people and they have to say, "Oh, good, I like it," or "I don't like it," or whatever. And I'm in a little bit of different space, and I usually don't do that. But
Yeah.
so my biggest criticism is coming from me. And you were
Yeah.
talking about like you're anticipating that it's going to be bad. This was
Mhm.
really interesting. So kind of stacking on the interview that I watched when you were talking about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I've been drilling down into that this last year or so, trying to really understand what it means. Why, if I'm with a group of A-list quilters, I'm like, You know, I feel like a
Yeah.
goofball. Why is it that the
Oh,
case?
country
And
rube.
I know. Howdy, how y'all doing here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I
Yeah.
brought my little patchwork.
Uh-huh.
And we feel less about that. And why and I see this all the time at the guild that I belong to, or you know, with friends, they'll show you a quilt. I do the same thing. I used to do the same thing. I don't do it anymore. They'll show you a quilt and it'll be like, you know, oh, that's beautiful. I love that fabric there. Where'd you get that and those colors? Oh, that's a nice block down there. And they'll
Yeah.
be like, yeah, it's good, but you know, the points don't match here, or and they are telling you all the things that are wrong with it.
Yeah.
And we do that. We do that as quilters. So I've
Mhm.
been kind of drilling down, why do we do that? Why, when someone gives me a compliment, you know, they're telling me their perspective. I like this. This is great. I love that fabric. They're giving me their perspective, and I'm saying, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Why do we
Yeah.
do that? So like I said, I've been drilling down to it this last few years. This is kind of gonna go. It might be taking a little turn here, but here we go.
No, it's
Buckle
good.
up.
Yeah.
So so all right, your heart. You've heard the phrase, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." And
Mhm.
I pondered that phrase. How do you think in your heart? Well, if you
Mhm.
consider that your heart is like the center of your being. Oh, I'm sorry. If you hear my dogs, I'm very sorry about that. There must be someone across the street daring to go out of their house and get in their own car.
How dare they? It's
How
okay.
dare they?
It's okay.
Um,
It's
okay,
very, very quiet.
very, very good. So in your heart, that's the seat of all your thoughts, your emotions, and
Mhm.
everything come out of there. And
Mhm.
that phrase, in that phrase, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The word thinketh is actually porto. And that's where we get the phrase porter, somebody who carries our bags up to the
Mhm.
place they're going to be, like to take
Yeah.
them outside, or the person who's at the door and says, "You can come in." No, you can't come in, right?
Mhm.
The person that guards the door.
Mhm.
Well, um, in I took a deep dive here.
I love this.
In ancient Roman times, when they would map out a city, they would take a plow, and that plow would, all right, we take this to this point and turn around this, and they would plow all of the streets and all the lines and stuff that
Oh,
they
okay.
needed to. They would
Uh-huh.
plow that out. And what they would do when they came to a place where there was a threshold, a door to the gate, like where the gate was going to be, or to a specific palace or something like that, they would pick up the plow and carry it across that threshold space into the next space. And
Oh,
that's where we get the word porto.
okay.
Porto, porter, like
Uh-huh.
portage, if you have to pick up your canoe and carry it over some, like Lewis and Clark had to do, they had to
Yeah.
portage everything to a certain point to
Yeah.
get back to the river, right? You are
Mhm.
carrying something across a threshold. So as a
Okay.
man porto
Uh-huh.
in his heart, so is he.
Yeah.
And the heart, it gets imprinted on it, right? Things that are thoughts that are emotional,
Mhm.
connected to emotional things, and that can be positive, encouraging things, and that can be traumatic or sad things. So, like
Yeah.
me being scolded by my grandma, that's not good enough. Rip that out again.
Mhm.
No, you need to do it, but you can't finish till it's perfect.
Mhm.
That imprints on me, on
Mhm.
my heart.
Yeah.
And then that's how I'm thinking. So that's how I am. So
Mhm.
if somebody and your heart wants equilibrium, it wants
Yeah.
things to be the same. So if you
Mhm.
confront it with an idea that it doesn't like, you can
Mhm.
get pushback. So
Yeah.
I hold up this quilt and I say, "What do you guys think?" And say, "Oh, that's great. We love this." You know, you get kind of compliments, but then I'm already thinking myself, I'm already convinced myself it's not good enough. Rip it
Mhm.
out, do it again,
Yeah.
whatever my thoughts are, whatever fears or thoughts that I had in there that match what is already in my heart,
Mhm.
I push back. No, no,
Yep.
no, it's not.
Yeah.
You're wrong. That's
Yeah.
not the way it is. So I have been what I on a journey.
Yeah.
I've been working to convince my heart
Yeah.
to allow the things in my heart that I want to be true.
Hmm.
because the traumatic things or the deeply emotional things that have been imprinted on my heart are not the truth of the situation.
Right.
So, like for example, you were saying, right, if you view that comment from a neutral point,
Hmm.
you're going to get closer to the truth of the situation. Now, sometimes
Absolutely.
our heart is, you're right on point, but other
Yeah.
times, a lot of the times, it's not. And that has been kind of really radical
Hmm.
in my whole life perspective and
Yeah.
viewing the quilting um, is changing that heart. What I carry into my heart, what I allow to be imprinted and stay there in my heart, um,
Yeah.
that's who I am. But we
Yeah.
have to, that's when we get those disruptors, those things that come in,
Hmm.
and you sit back and say, maybe I am really good at this.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a strength for me. And convincing your heart that it is, that's a
Hmm.
whole nother thing. But I think that is the root of imposter syndrome. And
Hmm.
partly because we haven't done it. I'm not an A-lister quilter, I can tell you that right now. Maybe I will be someday, but I haven't done that yet. So it makes sense when I'm around them to feel a
Hmm.
little goofy, but also to be able to look at it and say, no, wait, I have done these things, I have these accomplishments.
Hmm.
And so that what I'm feeling is not completely true. So
Yeah.
let's push something else. Let's bring something else over into the heart that is going to be true and going to
Yeah.
change what's in there, what's in the seed of that. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a little, I don't know, it's a little little weird out there, but
No.
that's been helping me a great deal to
Yeah.
really deal with who I am and accept who I am,
Hmm.
and not just automatically respond to like um no, I can't do that, or
Yeah.
I didn't do as well as I should have this year, or whatever, to be able
Hmm.
to look back and say, I've looked back at last year, no, I did this, and I did
Hmm.
this, and I did that. And those are big things, and that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
To be able to look at it reasonably, where
Yeah.
before I wouldn't be able to do that. It would
Hmm.
just be all the downsides. I'd see
Yeah.
only the downside, only the bad stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've talked about it a few times, and my husband's a therapist, so we have a
oh wow.
lot of these deep philosophical conversations all the time. And
Mm.
I love to learn along with him. So,
Mhm.
and he's, readily shares things that he's learning, and I've read books that he's had to read. And anyway,
Mm.
but what was I going to say? Oh, so something I've talked about before, but I have to remind myself too is like what you think about comes about. So it's that kind of thing, that same
Ooh, I like
phrase,
that.
just kind of less old English. But it's like whatever thoughts you carry about yourself or about your work or about things about life in general, that's what's going to come about. So if you're always in the negative, you're going to
Mm,
only see and experience negative things. Not only, but it's harder to see the positive things that happen. But if you start changing the way you think and view yourself and start finding
yes.
radical self-acceptance,
Ooh, uh-huh,
which
mhm.
is just accepting yourself exactly as you are in every single moment, regardless of what that moment is bringing you,
Ooh,
you can you can experience life in a whole new way, and that imposter syndrome starts to go away. It's still
mhm,
there because and I wonder too, like, because like you said, you have these thoughts like your grandma saying no, it has to be perfect, but that's your
mhm.
grandma's voice, that's not your voice. What
Right,
would
right.
your voice say to you?
Ooh,
These are things I battle with all the time. So I'm saying this as like a reminder to myself too. Like I
mhm,
have to tell myself these things because I have voices in the
mhm.
back of my head that say, "Ooh, I don't know. Like you shouldn't even try because you don't belong there."
Oh,
But then my radical self-acceptance and my now self goes, "Yes, you do." Like
yeah.
email that person, ask the question, like get that product in your store, whatever it is. Like
Mhm.
I have to battle with it sounds crazy, but the voices in my head, but it's like
Yeah.
because sometimes it's not my voice. It's not me talking to myself. It's someone in my
Mm,
past
mhm,
talking to myself,
mhm.
talking to me. And I have to like distinguishing whose voice it is and why it's there. And then
Oh,
knowing how to work around it is like it's the thing, but it's hard,
yeah.
but it's necessary.
That's so good. That's so good. I really appreciate that. I was listening to somebody, a
Mm,
neurosurgeon talking, and one thing that she was saying, explaining, she's the so the more when you think on a certain thought, we'll say like I hate cheese. I don't know why I'm picking that, but just say I hate cheese, right? And you
Yeah.
think that thought, it forms a synapses and
Hmm.
connections in your brain, right?
Hmm.
And the more you think that thought, it's like the more a deeper path is worn. If you think like
Hmm.
you're walking in the forest and
Hmm.
there's leaves all over the ground, the more you walk on that same path, the deeper that rut is going to be.
Hmm.
And eventually, if you keep staying thinking that same thing, your rut is so deep, you cannot think other thoughts
Right.
without forcing it. And we found that to be, well, certainly the case with my with a relative who's very negative, very, very
Mm.
negative, and um, it's kind of unable to be positive about
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
unless it's like a fake positive,
Hmm.
like, oh, of course, bless your
Yeah.
heart,
Yeah.
that kind of
You're like,
fake.
well,
What do you know?
yeah.
Yeah, but she's not able to do it,
Yeah.
um, just because everything's so negative, so negative, so negative. Those are all the thoughts that are that she has the capacity to think at this point in time.
Right. Yeah.
And it's very sad, but it's just a reminder to me, don't, what are those well-worn paths? Are
Hmm.
they the paths you want?
Hmm.
Do you want a different path?
Yeah.
And to think about those things. What are the
Mhm.
well-worn paths that I'm seeing, that I'm automatically replaying in my head? By the way, I'm
Right.
very fond of cheese, so just
Yeah.
I want to
You're like,
throw that out
disclaimer,
there.
that's not true. Cheese is fine, unless you're
Cheese is
allergic to
fine.
it.
I like cheese. I like
Yeah.
lots of different cheeses.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've fixed that path there. Hang on.
Yeah. We're good. We're good. We love cheese. No,
I love
that's
that.
yeah, that's that idea, especially like the neural pathways that you create, the stronger the
Yes.
bond is, the
Yes.
harder it is to like go away from that or create new pathways. And that's the thing
Mhm.
too, is like those, even if it's something that you're like actively trying to work on and you know it's
Mhm.
there and it's a thing that you're just like, okay, this is part of my thinking patterns and I'm trying to change it. That
Mhm.
path never goes away. You just have to strengthen the
Mm.
new path so that that's where it's
Ooh.
less resistant to go that way instead of going the old way. So it's, I think that's why, like, even if we're like have a great positive self-regard, we've got good self-esteem, we've got good, we're got a lot of self grace, like what am I trying to say? Yeah, anyway, like grace for ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
um those thoughts are still there because they're ingrained in us from a very young age, or we
Mhm.
spent a lot of our lives thinking that way. So even if
Mhm.
we're making new pathways, the old ones are still there and we just have to keep reinforcing the new ones so that those are the paths that our thoughts take. Those are the patterns that our brains go to instead. So it's
That
true.
makes me think of the Robert Frost poem, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
There was a road in two woods, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh man, you got my mind churning now. This
Good. I
is
like it.
great. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Pop, 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 pop. Okay.
Yeah, right. I know. So good. I love these conversations. This is so fun.
This is awesome.
And I love
Yeah.
digging deep because I think it's like
Yeah.
getting at the heart of who we are as people
Uh,
informs so much about what we do
mhm.
in our lives. It's like if you do something one way, that's how you're going to do everything, essentially. So if you
Mm,
come at something
mhm,
with negative thoughts, negative
mhm,
self outlook kind of
mhm,
thing, it's going to be pervasive in that activity or any
mhm.
other activity you come to. So it's like how do you want to approach everything in your life?
Right.
How do you want to be perceived? And you don't have any control over that, but like how do you perceive yourself in the situation?
Yes.
How do you perceive what
Yes.
you've done and what you've left behind?
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to quilting too. Like if I keep thinking all my quilts are garbage, I'm going to hide them in the closet and I don't want anybody to see them. But if I'm like, no, I'm
Right.
really proud of this, even with the mistakes, like I know they're there,
Mm,
but it's still a quilt. I
mm.
still made the thing I set out to make. And maybe if I ever made it again, I would know how to fix those mistakes, but I can't. And guess what? That just is the humanness of making quilts.
So do you think, it's a question here, do you think that like 'cause I have a pattern that I'm
Hmm.
not proud of. I don't like
Hmm.
it, right? So
Hmm.
I don't pitch it. I don't, like, yeah,
Hmm.
that's there. I think that let me know if you agree with me or what you think. I think that our value of it, people pick up on that
Mm-hmm.
and they don't like it either. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense? So like
Yep.
if I don't like something, then people are going to pick up on my not liking it and they're not going to like it. But if
Right.
I'm super excited about something, they're going to pick up on that and
Yeah.
they're going to like it. Do you think that seems to make sense to me? I've seen
Mm-hmm.
that bear out,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that's true. I think it's, yeah, if you're going to hide something away and be like, I'm not proud of this and I don't want you to
Yep.
see it, then people are going to be
Yep.
like, okay, then I won't look at it, I guess. Like, it must be
Yeah.
bad if she doesn't even want to share it with me,
Yeah.
especially
Oh,
if it's
that's
your
good.
own pattern. But if you come at
Hmm.
it like, no, I designed this, I worked hard on it.
Hmm.
It may not be
Hmm.
your favorite pattern, but it's still a piece of your brain, right? It's still a
Hmm.
piece of
Hmm.
your aesthetic and what you wanted to put out in the world. And if you
Yeah.
really hate it, then never sell it again.
Right.
Like disappear it from the light of day.
I'm gonna sell it
That's
off.
fine.
There they go.
But
Yeah.
that's your choice. But if you want it to be out there, if you still want to try to sell it, then like get yourself behind it. Just be like, yeah, I made this. And
Hmm.
I mean, it goes for anything. If I never talked about long arming or the
Hmm.
business that I do outside of podcasting, like, would anybody even know that I, do it? No, I mean,
Mm.
probably. But again, it's like, I know there's been times where I've had to fix mistakes. I've had a, couple of clients have had to ask me to redo the stitching, and that's okay. Like,
Mm.
I'm so grateful that they spoke up and they said, this is not what I wanted.
Mm. Hmm.
Okay, what do you want? Let me fix it.
Hmm.
And I'll take the L on that, and that's okay because I made a mistake, and it's more important to me to repair that relationship, repair
Mm.
that mistake, repair that connection than to be like, too bad, get what you get.
Hmm.
Could you
Hmm.
imagine?
I know.
So
Right?
so I
Oh,
think that like willingness to say, yeah, it's not my best pattern, but you know what? I made it and I do like it. It came from a place of you obviously liked it at one point.
mm-hmm. Hmm.
Obviously thought it was great at one point. So like
Hmm.
where along the way did you stop liking it and what was it? Was it someone else's voice? Was it a
You know,
person?
I could tell you exactly why. Now that I'm thinking about this, I'm putting it all together. Oh,
Yeah.
it's like my own little therapy session. I'm putting it
Okay.
all together. So I think that the things I don't like about it is
Mhm.
that people keep coming back to me with math mistakes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Have you considered like re-editing it or having like a tech editor go through it
Yes, that would be a really good idea.
and then you
And
could
I
re-release it?
did at the beginning. I think I
Mhm.
had some editing at the beginning, but yeah, I should do that. I should do that.
Because
And
then and that's the thing, other pattern designers too, like
mhm,
they have a spot in their websites for corrections because not every
right.
single pattern that goes out is perfect. And sometimes even with editing there's going to be some mistakes, but if you can fix those and put it out there, say,
Hmm.
hey, here's some edits, you can get them on my website if you already have the pattern. If you don't yet, here's the new version, it's reprinted or whatever, it's like
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
digital files redone with the mistakes fixed. And to me, I
Yeah.
think that's worth it because
Yeah.
it's still a pattern you
Right.
made, you put it out there, and for the people who want to make it,
Hmm.
you can offer them that, say, yeah, I'm so sorry I made some mistakes, but here I fixed them.
You know, and I think part of it, I don't want to point. I didn't want to point to it because
Mhm.
that's my flaw. I
Right.
don't want you to see what my flaw is. I want to
Mhm.
hide my flaw. Because if
Yeah.
you point it out, I already feel bad. You point it
Right.
out, you're gonna make me feel worse. So
Right.
I don't want you to see that. So yeah, so
But
you
then
have
that
the
picks at
illusion of perfect. Oh.
yeah. But then it picks at too, like, because I've had this about the podcast, like, people making comments about things that they wouldn't know, but I have insecurities about. And
Mm, hmm.
so even though, they're allowed to not like the show, that's fine. Leaving me comments about it, that's a little sus.
Hmm.
But because it was picking at a thing that like as a kid and all through my adult life, I've really struggled with, it's a negative thought about myself,
Yeah.
it hurt a lot more. But they
Yeah.
couldn't have known that.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
so I think for you, going all the way back, that dyscalculia, the struggle with
Hmm.
numbers, that feeling little Jenny sitting in the classroom feeling like
Hmm.
you're not as good as everybody else,
Yes.
it's picking at that piece of you that isn't healed yet.
Ah, yes.
And
Yes.
so, even though these people have no idea, now they're gonna
Mhm.
know, "Guys, it's fine, leave her alone. She's gonna fix it. It's gonna be okay."
That's right.
Like, but you now have the ability to let that go and
Yeah.
go back to little Jenny and say, "It's okay, we're gonna fix this." And
Mhm.
it's just it's a mistake, but we can fix it. There's something
Mhm.
we can do about it. And
Mm.
I think that's like ultimately for me where I find healing and growth is when I look at a mistake or a past thing that kind of keeps recurring in my life and go, "Oh,
Mhm.
but I have a solution for this now." And I
Mm.
know how to face this now because
Mhm.
I've learned and I've gone through the pain and I've gone through the over and over again of being like, how the hell did I end up in this same freaking situation again? Like, you know, these
What the
patterns we
heck
create in our,
happened?
yeah, I'm like, what? How? But it's being, again, that radical self acceptance like, well, this is where I am. What
Mm.
can I do about it? What solutions do I have?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I sound like I'm trying to be better than everybody else. I promise I'm not. I mess up just as much as everybody else. It's just I've put a lot of time and learning into my own
Mhm.
healing, and I've done a lot of therapy. And again, my husband's he's not my therapist, but my husband's a therapist, and he drops a lot of hot knowledge on me. And
Mhm.
"Here, read this book. You would really like it. Listen to this podcast. You'd really like it. Come to this lecture with me. You'd really like it." And he's right. I
Mhm.
do like it. But
Mhm.
anyway, that's beside the point. I
That's
think
so
just
good.
as human beings, we get, and I'm going to say the word triggered because it's a thing, but like we
Mhm.
get triggered by things that nobody else knows are triggering us. They have no
Mm.
clue
Mhm.
that commenting to you about the math mistake in your pattern is something that hurts.
Mhm.
How are they
Right,
supposed to know that?
exactly. Exactly.
So
Like,
unless
they're
you do
thinking,
the
"Oh
work,
my gosh, she probably missed this. Let me
yeah,
tell her so she can
I'm
catch it and
trying to be
fix it."
helpful. Yes.
Right.
In their minds, they're probably trying to help you out. In your mind, you're like, great. Now they think I'm an idiot. Not
Right.
that that's your thought, but
Downward
that's what I would
spiral,
think.
binge watching. What
Yeah. Exactly, exactly, like, it sends you, but they don't know that, they think
They
they're
don't know.
trying to be
Right.
helpful, they
Right.
want your pattern to be successful, so they're like,
Mhm.
"Hey, just so you know, this is the thing that maybe could be fixed," and
Mm. Mhm.
if you're not in the space to hear that because you're not ready to yet,
Mhm.
then it can be painful,
Mm.
where it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to continue to be
So
painful.
good. I'm gonna have to watch this again when it comes out because I know you're saying gems and I'm missing them and I need to because I'm processing something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is great. Oh, so I do a lecture for
Mm.
guilds called Leaf Quilts, Not Fabric,
Mm.
and talking all about UFOs. And I
Yeah.
share practical steps, but I think more of it why we get UFOs, there can be emotional and
Mhm.
thought issues why we get them. And one of the quotes that I use, because we always, you know, what's the phrase? It's if it's worth doing right, it's if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's not done till it's perfect, that kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
And I found a great quote by Henry James, the author,
Mhm.
the novelist, and he said, "The pursuit of excellence does not require perfection."
Yes.
Isn't that good?
Yes.
I can look at something and say it doesn't have to be perfect, but I can look at it and say, okay, all right, this triangle point is not matching up. All right, instead of ripping it out and saying I'm going to try to get this exact one perfect,
Mhm.
instead of ripping it out, all right, on the next one I do, I'm going to try this and see if
Mhm.
that helps. Oh, it's a little better. Okay, what else can I do? And you keep pursuing to get better instead
Mhm.
of scolding and punishing yourself for not being perfect.
Right.
And I think that is I think that's a big one, and I think I need to apply that to more areas of my own life.
Right? Yeah, it's like, well,
Yeah,
if it applies
yeah,
in this area, why can't it apply everywhere
right,
else? Yeah,
right.
I love that. And yeah, it's
Uh,
a done quilt
yeah,
is a good quilt. If it's finished,
yes.
it's good. Even if it's unfinished, it's still good, but again, it's it's speaking to that idea of
Hmm.
perfectionism. Like it's okay
Hmm.
if it's not perfect as long as it's
Hmm.
done, that's all that matters. As long as somebody
Hmm.
gets to curl up in that quilt and know that you made it and feel loved because of it, then that's
Right,
all that matters.
right. But I think also we take the wrong use of the word perfect.
Hmm.
So perfect can be like no flaws,
Hmm.
but perfect can also mean complete.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that needs to be added to this to make it complete.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you finish a quilt, it's perfect.
Yeah,
You've
exactly.
perfected it. Ta-da.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't have to work on that quilt anymore. You're done.
Mm-hmm.
Send it away.
Yeah, right. Be gone with you.
Be
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that because I have so many UFOs. And
Mhm.
I shouldn't say so many, just things that I'm like, ugh, but I hesitate because I'm like, what if I mess it up? What if the fix I need to make, or the thing I need to do to it, or the next
Mhm.
steps are going to make it worse, or it's going to make it so that I can't make the thing at all. And it's silly. Like,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I actually take a step back and look at the project and know, like, knowing what I need to do, I'm like, come on, just sew it. Like,
Mhm.
just finish it. Come on.
Mhm.
But I think
Mhm.
that also can get in my way too when I'm doing client quilts, because I like, what if, they, even though they've agreed to the design, they love what I put forth, I'm like, okay, now, like, it's
Mhm.
that next step of actually doing it, of actually making it happen, that I'm like, oh my God, like, what if I mess it up? And so I end up pushing myself to up to the deadline all the time because of the
Mm.
procrastination I experience from it, the anxiety of starting. And I think
Oh
I'm like,
gosh.
okay, probably need to work on that a little bit. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, I get in my own way because I'm overthinking. And when I just
Yes.
dive in and start and just do it, I'm like, I already made the plan. I just need to execute the plan. Like,
Mhm.
what are you freaking out about? You planned it already. It's like,
Mhm.
seems so silly always in the hindsight, but I'm it's like, well, here I am shipping this quilt on the day it's supposed to be shipped instead of, ahead of time when I could have, whatever, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But
Right,
anyway,
like those other better quilters. I mean, they're more organized, they get it done, and I haven't been there at all. I don't know what you're talking
right?
about
Never,
at
nobody.
all.
That's I'm alone. I'm alone in this. No.
I did. So I worked for a couple of local quilt shops here
Okay.
in the Denver area,
Hmm.
and one of them I was making a sample. Right, they have a kit and they need somebody to make the sample and put it on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was a center panel on it, and it wasn't an actual panel, but it's sort of like a picture scene on there. And I misread the directions and
Hmm.
I cut it in the wrong place.
Oh no.
I cannot tell you how my heart just stopped. I thought, oh no, I've done it wrong. And what I ended up doing is I took just a little tiny, like an eighth of an inch seam allowance and tried to match it
Hmm.
up exactly so it looked super close. And I thought, oh my gosh, I was devastated. I didn't want them to find it. I didn't want them to see it was my first sample that I was making.
Hmm.
She's the worst person in the world. Why'd we hire her? I mean,
Right.
you could just hear all those things. And then
Right.
actually I was having one of the gals who did long arm at the shop. She
Hmm.
was she was quilting it and I just happened to be walking by at the moment. She's pointing out to my manager the mistake that I made.
Mm.
And she's like, she did this. Is this gonna be okay? I don't know what
Hmm.
they were saying, but I was like, and I was so panicked. And then she came up to me later. She said, if you have a problem with something, you can let me know. It's okay.
Yeah.
There's no,
I don't want to disappoint you. Yeah. Yeah.
all the
Hmm.
things. I felt all the things. But
Hmm.
so I've done a lot of videos for like uh for blocks of the month. That's what I did a lot. I filmed a lot of demonstration videos where I take you through the whole series of blocks of the month, like for
Yeah.
Quilting Daily, Quilt University. I forget what they've changed the name a little bit. I forget what it's called now. But like
Hmm.
for McCall's and for
Yeah.
magazines and stuff, when they do a block of the month, I do the demonstrations, and I can't tell you how many times they would send me the fabric, right? And there is that little bit of like, okay, some of
Yeah.
it might be the and really, I say like we're not in a fabric famine. Some of them that I would be sent, it might be the only one in, there might be just enough for the kit or maybe one bolt or something, but
Yeah.
that's it. There's no more that I can find.
Yeah. You're
That's
like,
it. I can't
okay.
I can't go to the store and buy more because this
Hmm.
fabric hasn't been released yet and I'm stuck. But yeah, the little bit of panic and I
Yeah.
had to kind of learn because like when you're doing this stuff for the video series,
Hmm.
you have to have multiple steps. They're called step
Hmm.
outs. So you
Hmm.
have the fabric that you're going to use, and then you have demonstrating putting it together, and then you have to have a finished sample and putting it together, and then joining it to the other parts, and on
Hmm.
and on and on. So I'd always request more fabric,
Hmm.
definitely, But
Yeah.
you have to film those, you have to get over that. Okay, this is what the direction said. I've read that clearly. I understand. I'm going to cut now. And just
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
Julia Child said, you have the courage of your convictions and just do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's a tough spot. It is for
Hmm.
sure. Oh
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah. Heart stopper. It can absolutely be. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah. I can't. I just admire people who make samples for shops and stuff because I'm like, you have to get it right, you know?
You
And
do.
even if you don't, it's kind of like, yeah, just let them know, like, hey, I need more fabric or whatever. But it's that fear of admitting that you made a mistake because it's like somewhere deep inside you, you're worried about disappointing them or
Yep.
being scolded for it when it's just like, no, we're all adults here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
right, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not 5. Like, I can say, "Hey, I made a mistake and I need support in this," you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, wow,
Ugh,
that's
that would have
interesting.
been a much better way for me to handle it.
But you did, it's like you don't know what you didn't know, you know?
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
how are you supposed to handle things differently if you don't even know a
Yeah.
different way?
Hmm.
I think that's where that's the word I was looking for earlier, self-compassion. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I
Anyway,
like that.
when I was like saying self-grace, I was like, self-grace? No, self-compassion.
That's close.
Yeah, that's the same thing. But that self-compassion to like go, "Oh, it's okay that I made a mistake and I can
Mm-hmm.
ask for help and I'm not gonna get in trouble. And if I get in trouble, then maybe this isn't the environment I need to be in."
Ooh, yes. And with one of those shops, I learned that was not the environment for me to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think we feel like there's something wrong with us in those situations of like, why can't I fit in here? Why don't I feel like I belong here? And it's like, okay, what do I need to do? How do I get this person's affection, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
attention? And it's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
this just isn't a fit. And that's okay. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. I'm saying this to myself again because I'm like, the people pleasing in me is like, how do I slither in here and be one of you so that you want to keep me around instead of me coming
Right.
in and being like, I know what I have to offer. I know who I am. And if it doesn't work in this environment, that's okay. I
Mm-hmm.
can exit. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can leave. And flipping that script on myself has been so mind
Mm-hmm.
blowing and life changing because of all the times where I could have left and I didn't because I was trying to get something from somebody that they couldn't give me.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Right.
anyway,
Finding the dress that fits you,
exactly.
not making yourself fit the dress. Yeah.
Yeah. And then feeling bad about it
Mm-hmm.
because some
Hmm.
factory produced a dress that doesn't fit my body specifically. Ugh, rude.
Right. How dare you? How
Yeah.
dare you?
That's another thing that has been hard as an adult growing up and like having to go buy my own clothes is like I
Mm.
grew up with a mom who could make me stuff that fit my body.
Oh,
And like
nice.
all
Yeah.
my, not all, but a lot of my formal dresses, she would go pick a pattern and we'd design it together and she'd make it for me to fit me
Mm-hmm.
because um I'm not very well endowed. But the dresses that would come off the rack, if it fit the rest of my body, it was like I was lacking. And
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
that it's a bad thing, and there's nothing negative to say about it, but because it didn't fit the standard one size kind of has to fit all mass produced thing, it was like
Mm-hmm.
I almost had to have things made for me,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
so it makes it really hard to go into a store and pick things. And then when they don't fit, I'm like, I
Yeah.
should just make it myself. And then I'm like, I don't have time for that.
Right.
But then also having the skills to fix it. But anyway, that's a
Yeah.
different story. But yeah, I love all this. Okay, so I mean, things have been mentioned, but I want to specifically say, so you have your website, you have a YouTube channel, you teach
I do.
workshops, you do quilt
Mm-hmm.
talks at guilds, you have a
Mm-hmm.
shop, you have a blog, you have all the things.
I do have all
Um,
the things. I'm in
so
all the places with all the things, and it's
yeah,
annoying.
I know, right? You're like, what is alerting me? Which one of you? Like, yeah,
What?
yeah. You're like, I don't know. Sorry, guys. I'm everywhere, but nowhere at all the same time. But so and then you were just recently part of the Quilters color mixer. So,
Yeah.
and I think what I gathered, a lot of your guild talks are based on choosing colors and working with your stash
Hmm.
and so yeah, can you talk more about that?
Sure. So, yeah, I just recently finished the color mixer, which is with C&T Publishing, Creative Spark, and the year before I did, oh, I forgot which one I did. Which one I did? I try to do a lot. I try to be in a lot of places.
Mhm,
But maybe the one before was binding, or maybe it was working with, I'm doing a new thing, like much more art quilty, where you take a
mm,
classic work of art, like I
mhm,
used Van Gogh sunflowers,
mhm,
and using the spontaneity of Bob Ross, right?
mhm.
How quickly you can just paint something and add
Yeah.
something, and sort of the desire to uh, if you want to learn to paint, you go and you take your easel and whatnot, and you go to the museum and you try to copy a painting. You work on that until you finish that one, right? And you
Mhm,
learn from this master. So that's why I picked the Van Gogh. I want to learn from
mhm,
a master. What can I learn from him about color and shading and values, and what can I see there? Why do you think he did this? And what about balance? And learning all those things by copying those, but also with the improvisational abilities of Bob Ross. Let's just put a little
mhm,
bit here, let's put a little bit there. I have the freedom to shift things around. So I came
mhm,
up with a technique, and this is what I demonstrated in 2023 with Creative Spark. That one was reproducing the sunflowers thing, because
mm.
as we've discussed with my hand, making a gazillion tiny little templates to match all of these little things, that's not going to fly. I can't
Yeah.
do it that way. So I came up with some different techniques to be able to do that. I
Mm,
hope to develop a course. I will be developing a course on that really soon, but that was the first Creative Spark. This one was Color Courage.
okay.
I have a unique perspective in that working in the shops, the, that I was always helping people every day pick out fabrics
Mhm,
and kind of studying this. How to pick out, what are better ways to pick out? How can I explain this to people so they can see what I'm seeing in putting things together? So I
mhm,
came up with a course for that, the Quilters Color course, which is, you can get to it through my website, but that has a series of lessons that kind of teach you those same things. And so I offer the Color Courage lecture, which is kind of the lecture that leads up to the course. I offer that to guilds, and I also offer them sort of a mini version of the course as a workshop to do.
okay.
So I've got that, and then the other one, the other course that I have is beautiful machine binding. As
Mm,
uh, doing shop samples, working
yeah.
under deadlines, right? I had a quilt that I did. It was supposed to be, not only was it a sample for a shop, they were going to photograph them, a series of them,
Mm,
and put them in a book. And I had to have it in the next day. And
ooh.
my binding was, it wasn't just a bad binding. I call it a cry for help. And so I stopped doing everything, and I thought, I'm a quilter. I have to find out. I can't use a 3/8 or 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't give me any of that silly business. I'm a quilter. I use a 1/4 inch. How can I make a beautiful binding by machine, because I don't have time to
Mhm,
sit and hand bind everything. How can
yeah,
I do this by machine, have it be good? No special tools that I have to turn upside down and I get all confused about, and I lost the instructions, and how did I do it last time? But how can
yeah,
I do it consistently and have it be beautiful? And so that's my beautiful machine binding thing. And I think
okay.
that also comes from my different perspective of looking at things. How can I
Yeah,
make it easier for me, a way that's going to make sense to me, make it as
mhm,
easy as possible, but repeatable and teachable to beginners. So those are kind of the two big courses that I have. But I do try to be. I love Creative Spark. I'm going to be with Quilt Fest later on in March. I'm going to be on there teaching three different things: teaching the binding and the color stuff, and the sunflower palette applique, which is what I call it,
mm,
sunflower palette.
yeah,
So I'm going to be teaching all those things. Very excited, and
fun.
so excited. Beginning of February, what was released is my appearance on the Quilt Show with Ricky Timms and Alex
Oh,
Anderson.
oh, so
It was
fun.
awesome. It
That's
was really
awesome.
cool because, I mean, I talked about watching Simply Quilts way back, and I'd watch Alex, and
Yeah,
I mean, I hope you can pick up that I like to be on stage. I like
yeah,
this is my space. I'm very comfortable here.
yeah,
But I would watch her doing her stuff. I'm like, I could do that.
yeah,
I could do that. I could do
yeah.
that. And that's what I felt. So being on the show with them, oh my gosh,
My
it
gosh,
was
dream
really
come true.
cool. It's really cool. Very cool. Kind of
Oh,
a bucket list moment. It was very, very cool. Yeah.
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 Congratulations. That's
Thank
so
you. Thank
exciting.
you. Yes.
Like sometimes it's like don't meet your heroes, but also sometimes absolutely meet your heroes, right? Like
Yes.
that's
Yes.
so cool. And somebody who makes you feel like you can accomplish something or that you could do what they're
Love that.
doing, even if they're
Yes.
like, this big name person who's got a ton of
Right.
followers and this huge platform, but they speak to you, you're like, dang,
Yeah.
that's a good person, right? Like
Yeah.
you wanna be with those people. So that's incredible.
Yes. Yeah, that was oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, totally right on. I love I'm a bit of a goofy fangirl. And I love to go. I've loved the times I've been able to go to Quilt Market. I've only been able to go a couple times. But
Mm,
going to Quilt Market, um, and for those of you who don't know, it's like Comic-Con for quilters.
mm,
You're seeing all these people everywhere. And I remember sitting there in the booth that I was working at, and Eleanor Burns walked by, and I'm like, oh, "You're Eleanor Burns!"
yeah,
It's such a goofball, but I'm so excited to see her. She
yeah,
taught me how to quilt. She taught me
yeah,
how to make my very first quilt. I'm like, and so I'll say, "Oh, you know who you are." I'm just so excited to meet you. Such a
yeah.
such a goofball. But yeah, yeah,
No,
that's
I think it's
meeting those
exciting.
heroes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
It is exciting. Not everybody's going to be as what do I want to say? Like
Receptive.
on camera is different
Oh,
from in person.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And that's okay. I mean, I
Mhm.
think we all have our reasons for boundaries we have, but
Yes.
I
Yes.
think if you're gonna like carry your famous face around at a
Mhm.
huge event, you better be ready for people to come say hi to you
Right.
because
Right.
like the people who know you are gonna know you, right? They're gonna
Yeah.
know your face as soon as they see your face and they're gonna have an
Mm.
emotional connection to you. And I think
Yes.
that's something that, and I get it, like the whole thing with celebrities being like, no, we need boundaries. And these are our quilt celebrities, right?
Right. Oh
Like,
yeah.
we need
Yeah.
boundaries. I need to be able to go to the grocery store without paparazzi in my face, kind of thing. But like, if you're at a quilting event,
Yeah.
put your fancy face on and say hi to
Right.
everybody. I'm like, come on. Um,
Yes,
but
that's so
yeah,
true. That's so true.
but yeah, I
That's so
think
true.
it is exciting to meet these people that have had such a huge impact on the thing that you do, right? Like,
Mhm.
you have a huge presence in the quilting world and you do all these things and it's because of this one person, right? Or
Mm.
it's these books that you read and this person that you
Right.
watched on TV and I mean DVR and VHS and
Right.
you were accessing this stuff when it wasn't so easy to
Mhm.
get a hand on like it is now
Mhm.
where you can get it
Oh,
anywhere on social
yeah.
media and whatever. But yeah, I love that. And I like QuiltCon last year, 2024 was the first time I went and
Cool.
like meeting the Ruby Star girls was like I was freaking out because again, huge fan, huge fan. Do they know me? Absolutely not. But I'm like worshiping at Sarah Watts's
Right.
feet and like begging Melody Miller to sign something. Not begging, she offered, but like she
Uh-huh.
signed something that I purchased and like getting to own original art from these people that I admire so much. And it was a big deal.
Mhm.
And then also meeting fans. I've never met them in person or I don't know them, but they love my show. And they came up to me and were like, I love your, I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I just felt so honored and so
Uh-huh.
blessed to be able to like physically interact with these
Mm.
people who listen to the show from afar.
Mhm.
And it meant so much to me. And it was only like a couple people, but like having my mom there too and see
Mm.
that. And she was like, oh my gosh, it's so cute. And I was like, I mean, I'm almost 40. Is it cute? Yeah, it's cute. But it's just such a cool experience to like be in the presence of the people who inspire you.
Mm.
And I've never been to market. I want to go. Um, this might be my year, but
Ooh.
um because yeah, I've heard great things, but I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, yeah, that experience of getting to meet sometimes meeting your heroes is great and sometimes it's not so
Mhm.
great, but it's also like what what again, the environmental awareness of like where
Mm.
am I? What's going on? Is this person trying to do something and I'm interrupting them? It's like,
Mm.
well,
Mhm.
shoot your shot. It's like, I mean, really, but also they're humans. And I think that's too can be where people don't say anything to the people that they admire and want to talk to. Because they're like, well, I didn't want to
Mm.
bother you.
Yeah.
But again, it's like situational awareness, others
Yeah.
awareness, self-awareness. It's like a whole thing. But anyway.
I think one of the I've learned a really great lesson even working back in the day at Sofro Fabrics.
Hmm.
And that was, working the register, right? You see people come up to you and they might have a frowning face, they're sad or
Yeah.
whatever. They're not happy when they come up
Yeah.
to you at the register. And if I would smile at them and
Hmm.
be kind to them, they would leave with a smile.
Hmm.
And I realized I am affecting their attitude. I am, in some way or another, changing their day.
Yeah.
That's powerful. I mean, if
Yeah.
I can, it's all like about trajectory. Somebody asked Jim Lovell from Apollo 13 mission that didn't make it to the moon, right? They had
Hmm.
to slingshot back around. They
Yeah.
had to redo all their calculations to try to control it to land back on Earth. And
Yeah.
a reporter asked him, "What would you have done if you'd just been a little bit off on your calculations?"
Yeah.
Thought for a second, and he said, "We would have missed the Earth and been lost in space forever."
Yeah.
And if you think about that, just a tiny tap in one
Hmm.
direction or another changes where you end.
Hmm.
And I see that as a very powerful, impactful thing. And I mean, really, I kid about working retail, but I love doing that because I know the way I deal with this person, that can change things for them. I
Yeah.
want to be able to do that. That's part of why I love meeting. Oh, here I go again. Love meeting people who've had that kind of impact on my life. I
Yeah.
want to have that kind of impact on other people's lives.
Right.
I have a
Yeah.
slogan for my company, entertain, educate, and encourage. And I
Yeah.
really want that to be the things that people see me for. I
Yeah.
want them when they leave spending time with me to have been encouraged in some way or another. I
Right.
want to have some way or another affected their trajectory in a positive way.
Yeah.
And if I can have people coming up to me and saying, "That was just great. What you said really impacted me," or something like that. Hey, awesome. I'm so
Yeah.
glad. I will hug you. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad to hear that because that's kind of one of my inner motivations. I really want
Yeah.
to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
that's, then meeting other people. And I haven't had anybody that be like, oh no, I did have somebody. I won't share who it is, but somebody that was like people get into the quilting business for different reasons. Some
Right.
people kind of I had this new technique, my guild wanted me to teach it to them, and then it just kept going and going and going. They kind of got backed into it. I
Yeah.
feel like I want to speak and I want to talk and I want to encourage people. And what will people pay me money to do that about? Quilting.
Right.
I love
Yeah.
quilting. Let's do that. So I kind of, that Venn diagram, I kind of loop
Uh-huh.
that together.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I came in to quilting with this set of skills, Toastmasters, acting,
Mm.
improvisational theater, all of those things,
Yeah.
teaching, homeschooling my girls and everything,
Yeah.
all of those skill set to bring to quilting as opposed to being backed into it and having to learn how to do those things. I feel like I'm done these things and I'm ready to do it in quilting. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. So
Yeah.
I in a different perspective, people are,
Yeah.
different personalities and stuff, but
Yeah.
I love meeting people and interacting with people. When I've had some magazine stuff, I've had um one of my former students come up to me at Safeway, as I was grocery shopping. They said,
Yeah.
"I saw you in the magazine." I said, "Oh, it's so good to see you. Oh my gosh." It was
Yeah.
pretty cool. It was a cool moment. I haven't had a lot of those. I haven't, my
Right.
husband teased me like, "We'll go someplace you'll be recognized." I said, "It'll have to be a very different place than where we are right now." But
Yeah. Right. You're like, not the
QuiltCon,
hardware store.
maybe. Right, not the hardware store. This is a tire shop, honey. It's not gonna happen here. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so yeah, meeting people, I part of me thinks, maybe, well, this is A-lister problems that I don't have right now. But, would I be upset that they come up and ask me, you're eating or something like that? I just wanted to say hi. And I don't know that I would be. I want
Yeah.
to know that that's part of my payoff. I mean, they're always asking, what's your why? Why are
Yeah.
you doing what you're doing? Well,
Yeah.
part of it is I love working with fabric and all the potential. I love working with color and making
Mhm.
things that you just look at and go, oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. That's what I try to
Yeah.
teach at the color stuff. So I love that. I love having the completed things that other people can look at and say that. And I love having a positive impact on somebody's life. And if it's any one of those things that you want to thank me for, awesome. I want to be
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah,
want to bring to you. So if you tell me I brought that to you, that's a payoff for me. That
right.
that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like those voices that have been encouraging and have kept you
Yes.
sane in the times when you are like, I can't do this. And you're like, no, I can. I can go back to this person. And I know that they've got
Mm-hmm.
words of wisdom for me, even though it's not
Mm-hmm.
personal, right? But like you
Mm-hmm.
can rely on those voices and those teachers out there that can support you. And
Yeah.
I think being able to share your gratitude with them is so
Mm-hmm.
important. And
Mm-hmm.
and I agree with you. Like I'm kind of the same way. Like if I can provide a show that somebody likes and it keeps them company while they're sewing or they're shopping or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then awesome. That's what I want to do. And if it positively impacts them to do something new because they heard from a guest that really inspired them or encouraged them to do something that they've been putting off, then that's even better. Like that's all I really want, right? Like a voice for encouragement of like, yeah, let's build a strong community because we lift each other up
Mm,
and
yes.
like if you
Yes.
recognize me and you want to say hi, then come say hi. You know, it's like, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not expecting it by any means because like even when it did happen, I was like, me? Like looking around, I'm like, oh right, I have a podcast. Like I forget,
Well, that's me.
because I'm just doing this in my house. It's like not, I don't know. It's never felt like I don't know. Anyway, so
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just knowing that and then s- yeah, just having those voices to rely on again, it was like so important, especially
Mm-hmm.
when it's like we all have our moments
Mm-hmm.
where we're like, I don't know, we're like doubting ourselves or just kind of feeling in a slump, but it's like we know who we can go to or who we can go listen to or go
Mm-hmm.
look at their stuff and be
Mm-hmm.
re-inspired and get back into the game of quilting. But
So let me ask you a question. Who
yeah,
who re-inspires you? Who are you inspired by recently?
I mean, everybody. No. Um, it's hard to say one person or another, but I mean, I love Ruby Star. I know there's a ton
Mm,
of Ruby Star fans, but I love Art Gallery.
mhm,
Like their designers, they have a bunch of designers that I love and that
mhm,
just make me go, okay, yeah, I want to quilt again. Or
mhm.
trying to think, like I have some friends who are designing some new patterns, like the Katie of So Suspicious. She just released
Oh.
secretly, just kind of released a new pattern.
Mhm.
And it's beautiful. I think it's called like Winter Blossom. I can't remember. Anyway,
Oh.
I'll find the name. I shared it on my Instagram stories because I was like, what the heck? This is so pretty. And Emily over at Peach and Honey Studio, she's actually releasing her next quilt pattern. I think it comes out during QuiltCon, like on the 20th.
Mm, mhm,
Um, and just seeing these people I know that like they've been on the show and they're pattern designers and just like getting themselves out there and designing and doing something that they love and like that I've gotten to be a part of their
mhm,
journey in any way whatsoever has felt
mhm,
really cool and like seeing them the makes that they do is like really inspiring too. So yeah, I think
mm,
just the people I surround myself with
mhm,
honestly
mhm.
inspire me all the time.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Who does it for
That's
you?
awesome. I have a few, I guess, kind of words. Words inspire me more than fabric, maybe would be a way
Yeah.
to put it. I always inspired by Zig Ziglar. Anytime I pick up a book of his, I'm just, okay, underline that. Okay, underline that.
Mm,
Okay, I need to stop now because I need to focus on these things I just said, not skip over that. So
hmm
just a lot of encouraging stuff. Like one of his phrases I really like is, um, people don't care how much they you know until they know how much you care.
hmm
I think that's so true, right? I can, and in fact, I've seen this. Uh, speakers at quilt at quilt guild meetings and stuff because I've been a member of a quilt guild for a long time. But
Yeah.
speakers up there, and you don't think they don't really care about me. They don't.
hmm
They're teaching to teach, but I don't really care how much they know because of somehow of how they presented it. But if people think you care, if you actually do
Yeah.
genuinely care, people are
hmm
going to want to listen to you much more. And I think that's a really impactful one for me. I also
hmm
have a couple of close quilting friends who are in the
hmm
business. Kate Colleran, She and I were members of the same guild,
Mm,
and she was there one night. She had a little booth and everything, and she had done a course or two for Craftsy.
mm,
And when Craftsy was, it's a little different now, but first
yeah,
go around with Craftsy. And I came to her like, I want to do what you're doing. How do you do that? And she's like, yes, whatever you want. Very,
yeah,
so generous with her time and her
yeah.
information and encouragement. And I contacted her a little while ago. We're doing kind of a collab because she's on the quilt show as well. So we're doing, a
Mhm.
few of us are doing a collab to kind of promote that. But she's like, yeah, sure, I'm all in. Yeah, whatever you want. And she's miles ahead of me, but just having that kind of encouragement and
Yeah.
generosity,
Hmm.
it's a generosity thing. I
Yeah.
think she's just very encouraging with that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So I,
awesome.
I tend to, when I think about quilting or find encouragement, often it's outside of quilting, the quilting space, because I
Hmm.
kind of get like maybe overwhelmed or discouraged
Yeah.
or something like that in the quilting space. So I
Hmm.
look for help outside of that. I'm also part of I've been doing a business thing this year or
Oh,
last year, Created to Thrive, which is
okay.
actually more geared for artists, and it's
Okay.
helped me to see my stuff more as an more of an art form, and
Uh-huh.
think treat it like, value it like it's
Hmm.
art and
Yeah.
important, and it has a purpose.
Hmm.
And but they talk so much about the business side of things, which is really good. And so that is encouraging to me, even though it's not in the quilting space at all. There's like two other quilters in there, and I've latched onto both of them. But
Yeah.
but
You're like, ah,
yeah, hello, we do the same thing.
yeah, let's make an island.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. But just having that business perspective that's outside of quilting helps me to bring that in to better
Mm,
understand and to better manage my quilting business, so to speak.
hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And to
Yeah.
and to kind of respect my ideas, my own
Yeah.
inspiration. Because I'll get ideas and I'll write them down. And one of the points he makes, excuse me, one of the points Matt Tommy makes in there is that, if you're supposed to be making art, right? Whatever it happens to be, if you're supposed to be doing that, if that is the gift and the skill you've been given, you need to get in the studio and make that art.
Yeah.
That's something you're supposed to do. I don't know about you, but as a quilter, I would sometimes go weeks without touching my machine
Hmm.
because oh, I got to put this post up on Facebook. I got to do that newsletter. I got to do this. I got to do that, right? All of these other things besides sewing. And if
Right.
if I'm not doing that, if I'm not creating something,
Yeah.
well, eh, it's upside down. I need to
Right.
focus on doing those things. I
Yeah.
need to focus on that. And so that's been a huge encouragement to me to really treat it like it's a significant part of who I am,
Yeah.
is this person to create these things. And it's
Yeah.
my view of the world and it's my experiences, and I need to put that out there.
Hmm.
That's part of what I need to do. So I've restructured my whole day. It used to be, I mean, I could sit down at the computer. I could spend all day at there. And then the next day, all day at the computer. And that
Yeah.
is not a quilter. That's a
Yeah.
computer person.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Like,
exactly.
so I've switched it, and now I'll do some of those things in the morning because you got to check your email, you
Hmm.
gotta make little tweaks on the website, you got to keep in touch with people. Yep, yep, yep. Do
Hmm.
those things. You got to do some accounting. Yep, do that. And then this time in the afternoon, I'm making things.
Yep.
What am I going to make? What's the next
Yeah.
thing I need to work on to make? What's the latest inspiration that I have? Because I
Yeah.
have I have piles of stuff that are like, oh yeah, I want to do that, or some that's just still sitting in my head, or things that
Yeah.
I've like, oh wait, I got an idea, and do kind of a quick sketch out. I
Yeah.
need to be building those things. I need to make those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and get back in the studio. So that's kind of my thing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's good. That's a good reminder too, because I think as, in the quilting business, whatever part of it that you're in, whether you're a
hmm,
designer or you're a long armor or whatever, like, or teacher, there's so many different things, but like, yeah, if you're not making time to actually engage with the craft that you're talking about and you're
yeah,
posting about and you're accounting about,
yeah.
then what are you doing?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I had to do the adjust for myself too, because I would find days where I'm like, I didn't even touch the sewing machine today. I didn't even put anything on the long arm today because all
Yep.
I was doing was computer stuff.
Hmm.
And there's gonna be days like that where it just happens, I think. But like that intentionality of like, okay, I will spend my morning wherever you feel the most,
Right. Right.
um productive in whatever aspect it is. Like, I think for me, I'm more productive if I get up in the morning, I engage with socials, I check my email, I go on Etsy, check all that, whatever, check
Hmm.
the website, and then spend the rest of my day just like sewing, because then I'm like, I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about it. And
Yeah,
if I want
exactly.
to check socials just to see if anybody is commenting or asking me questions or trying to get a hold of me, I'll kind of pop in every once in a while. But then there's like not the pressure, because like I did the business stuff first.
Yes. And
So
now I'm free to
now,
create.
yeah.
Yeah.
And even if
Yeah.
I'm creating for business, I'm still the
Hmm.
creative part. It's still the part that is
Hmm.
the whole reason I'm doing the business stuff in the first place. So I think that's
Right.
good, like finding a good balance. and
Hmm.
and I know that that is a struggle for other,
Yes.
quilting
Yes.
business homies that
And
I
I
have.
I think too, my husband is he does computer controls and automation systems.
Mm.
So very, very tech dense. I mean, his job would be to be completely at the computer and
Yeah.
stuff. But we're opposite. We're so opposite. I am not wired that way. And if
Yeah.
I find I'm spending all of my time in front of the computer,
Yeah.
then it's draining me. It's
Hmm.
not giving me life and encouragement and joy or whatever. It's
Yeah.
draining from me. So
Yeah.
I have to, that is my part of my responsibility. I have to be in there and creating because that's the way I am. That's the way I'm wired. That's the way my brain works. So
Yeah.
don't force it into something else that doesn't fit into, right? Be
Yeah.
be who you are and lean into that strength instead of worrying
Hmm.
about so much about the weaknesses. But yeah, I do the same thing in the morning. You take a boom, 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 get it done.
Yeah.
Okay, I've accomplished some things there that were on my mind. Now I can go on to do these other
Yeah.
things. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing. Huge,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. And just knowing yourself well enough to know like what's going to work for you. And sometimes you have to flip
Hmm.
flop things, and that's okay.
Yes.
But still having that general idea of like what's going to work for you and what's going to help you feel more successful. Because I think ultimately for me, if I really wanted to get to a certain thing, or I really wanted to sew that day, I really wanted to make sure to keep working on a customer quilt or whatever,
Hmm.
but I just didn't get to it, I
Hmm.
have a really hard time feeling like I was successful
Hmm.
that day. Even though I was doing stuff all day, I was
Hmm.
making progress in other areas. I think if I don't touch the sewing machine, or if I don't get to the long arm on a day, it really bums me out. So I'm like, I'm
Hmm.
trying to be more intentional just
Hmm.
for that, knowing that I'm going to feel better if I do.
Hmm.
I do make that time. So,
And I think too, we do ourselves a disservice if we put our creative endeavors, even now I'm just speaking like home quilters, not in the
yeah.
business or anything, if we
Yeah.
put that last on the list.
Yeah.
So what I was doing when I was teaching my girls and I was talking about not having a lot of time to sew, um, I just kind of pushed it to the very last. I remember there was a Saturday weekend and I'd worked really hard trying to get all the little things that needed to be done,
Yeah.
so that when it got to Saturday, I could have a stretch of time to just put in my books on tape, uh,
Hmm.
CD at that point, books
Yeah.
on CD, and play that and just quilt and putter
Yeah.
around in my room. And then other things came up and I couldn't do it. And I
Hmm.
remember crying because I wanted so badly to be there and I couldn't do it because I didn't, part of it was because I didn't make what fed me, what encouraged me, what is a part of me a priority.
Hmm.
Everybody else was a priority and I was last.
Hmm.
And partly because I put myself in that position. I
Hmm.
could have done other things and I could have said, well, I don't know what I could have said that exact moment because I don't remember the exact circumstances, but I do
Right.
remember that I'd pushed my stuff way, 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 way back in the corner, in the bottom
Hmm.
of the closet, in that little shoebox, and just pushed
Yeah.
it back there.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a disservice
Yeah.
to say this thing isn't important.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
we're conditioned that way as women, even if it's
Mm,
unintentional. Like
mhm.
we gather that like we're supposed to be the ones meeting everybody else's needs. Like I'm the mom, I'm the wife. It's my job to do XYZ. Even if you're in a
Mhm.
supportive environment, like if I like try to default or ask like my husband asks me what I want, I'm like, well, what do you want? He's like, I'm asking you. Like you tell me because I don't care. It's like,
Right.
but I still go to that like, well, okay, I need to push my needs aside. And he's like, why are you doing that? Eh, but it's, well, I was conditioned that way. And
Mhm.
and I think just generally society expects women to be the
Mm,
caretaker and be the one
mhm,
to step in, and you sacrifice mom, like moms,
mm.
you do so much for us, and it's like, and I'm going to go do more for myself now, like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
they make us seem selfish if we try to put our own wants and needs first.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a distortion of like we're praised for not putting yourself first, but I think that's a distortion.
Yeah.
I think we've tweaked it because I think that boy, the years I spent with my daughters and
Yeah.
homeschooling and going to museums and art
Hmm.
classes with them and all those kinds of things,
Yeah.
those were treasures. It was wonderful. And I'm
Right.
glad I did it. I'm glad I made the sacrifices I needed to do that. But
Yeah.
I also think that I could have put more on,
Right.
I'm gonna do this now. And
Hmm.
you guys are working on your math right now. Okay, I'm gonna go sew.
Right.
I'm gonna go do this.
Right, but
And
again,
that
it's,
would have been okay. But
yeah.
I instead, it wasn't in balance at all. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm more virtuous if I sacrifice everything.
Hmm.
Instead of like, I'm doing a lot of sacrifices here, but you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not bottom shelf.
Right. Like,
I'm up here too. My needs and the things that I want are important too. And I
yeah.
can choose which things I'm going to sacrifice. And sometimes I can choose, I'm not going to give that up today. I'm sorry. I know you want to go and do this. Call up
Hmm.
somebody else to take you because I'm not going today.
Yeah.
I need to do
Yeah.
this. And that's okay. That's
Yeah.
good, actually. It's healthy to be able to do that.
Right.
You gotta have some
Yeah.
times of doing that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
that, again, personal boundaries and like knowing what you need and valuing what you need. And I think
Yes.
you were just talking about that, like valuing what you do. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's so easy to just feel like, no, it's fine. Like I'll take care of your needs. I'll do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like you said, virtuous. It's like this tale that we've been told and continue to tell ourselves and each other is that like
Mm,
we're somehow better and higher on a pedestal if we sacrifice everything, if we lay down and let everybody walk all over us. And
mm-hmm.
the thing I've loved from all this growth I've experienced in these last 10 years of going to therapy and doing tons of like just self work on my own and learning about myself, meeting myself,
Mm,
is being able to set boundaries and communicate boundaries.
mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that you don't like a person or that you don't want a person around or that it's all about acknowledging your own needs and then acting on that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I said I'm going to do this and then you follow through. And it's like setting little promises, following through on little promises that you make to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we betray ourselves first before anybody else betrays us. And
Ooh.
if we continue to betray ourselves, betray our needs, betray our wants, then
Mm-hmm.
we're going to just, again, those neural pathways is like, nope, my
Mm,
default is to ignore my own needs, not communicate about them,
mm-hmm.
and to just try to placate everybody else. Well, that ends up coming out in autoimmune disorders. That ends up coming out in health
Mm,
issues. That ends up coming out
yes.
in rage fits out of nowhere because nobody knows that you're so frustrated. And you don't even
Right.
know that you're so frustrated until
Yes.
you're ready to
Yes.
literally rip your hair out of your head.
Mm-hmm.
But like, why did it have to get there?
Mm-hmm.
And it helps being in an environment like I saw it with my husband, that he's like can hear those things and he can put me in my
Mm-hmm.
place and go, girlfriend, like I asked you what you want, and me being like, I don't know how to answer that question. He's like, okay, well, think about it and then get back to me. It's like, it's a
Mm-hmm.
non-negotiable sometimes that he's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you get to have wants and needs in this household too. That's how this works. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
right, I forget sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's a
Oh, that's good.
practice and it's a, yeah, again, like, what do you value? Do you
Mm-hmm.
value yourself? Do you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not selfish. I think in a negative way, I think selfish thoughts are okay sometimes because, yeah,
Mm,
I'm not going to go put myself in a situation where I know I'm emotionally and mentally going to be harmed. Is it
yeah,
selfish of me
yeah.
to say I'm not going to go? Then fine, I'm selfish, you know?
Mhm, mhm,
So I think it's again flipping that script, flipping that narrative. Like, what do we tell ourselves about our decisions?
yeah,
Are we
good.
deciding that for other people before they even get a chance to respond? And
Mhm.
whose voice is it telling us those things?
The preemptive no,
Mhm.
right? I don't wanna be hurt or rejected, so I'm gonna preemptively say no
Uh-huh.
before I even ask. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, oh my gosh. Okay, we've talked about all the things under the sun, and I've loved it so much, but I feel like probably we should wrap this up. But
All
before
right.
we do,
Mhm.
I wanna know if you have a tip or a piece of advice that you would want to share with our listeners.
Oh, boy. I think I've shared a lot of what I usually do,
Yeah.
like for an inspirational thing. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go practical, doing the
Okay.
practical tip. One thing that I always have, a notion that I always have at
Mhm.
my machine, this is kind of like my most favorite notion, is glue stick.
Glue stick, yes.
Glue stick. I love glue stick, and no, it's not cheating. I use it in binding. I use it if I can't get my points to match.
Mhm.
I'll pin them, right? I'll put a little pin in that triangle thing and then fold down the seam allowance and put a little touch of glue stick in there and glue
Mhm.
that together. And I learned that in a shop sample that I did that had 350 half square triangles.
Oh my god.
Right. And they were from all different companies. It was all quilt fabric, but it was from all different companies. So kind of different variances in thickness and texture and
Mhm.
just enough to make you say, I have to learn how to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, I love glue stick. I always have it on hand. And no, it's not cheating. You have my permission to use it anytime you want to.
You
Glue
heard it
stick
here, folks.
is my hero. So
Jenny K
that would
gave you
kind of be
permission.
my tip. And then all the other things that we talked about, those two.
Yeah. And everything else we've ever
Everything
said
else we
in this
talked about.
whole conversation. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right.
Oh, glue stick. You know what? I honestly have started using glue sticks. Like, I mean, I never even thought to, but the more I've seen it, I'm like, oh, yeah, people use it in binding. I'm like, okay, that's great. So I've
Hmm.
tried it, especially when I'm struggling. But I've
Hmm.
recently started using it in piecing when I just can't get something to stay where I want it to, or the
Yes.
pinning is like, you have to take the pin
Yes.
out, but you need the thing to stay in place.
Yes.
And it has been such a game changer. And especially
Mhm.
with FPP. Oh my God. If you can't get a
Ooh,
fabric to like stay in a good spot, and even pinning through the paper can sometimes distort it enough
yep.
that it kind of messes it up on the backside.
Mhm.
So I've using just a little bit of glue stick like in the seam allowance areas or like somewhere
Right.
where I know it's not going to be noticed,
Mhm.
just to keep that fabric in place, and that has worked wonders. So
Yes. Oh,
anyway,
yes.
I'm with you. I love that. And such I think, yeah, sometimes we need permission to use the tools that are gonna help us do what we
Mhm.
do better and
Mhm.
not compare ourselves to everybody else and say, "Well, they don't use glue sticks." It's like, "Okay, good for them, but maybe you need it, and maybe one day you won't, but use it. It doesn't
Use
matter."
it. Right. Right. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find the thing that works for you.
Mhm.
Find the method, the technique, the way, whatever that's going to work best for you. Because
Yes.
you know, and that's one of the big things too, right? The last 4 years have been a little crazy. At
Yeah.
times the world was cuckoo bananas. But
Uh-huh.
when I sit down at my sewing machine, this is my world. I'm in
Yeah.
control. I
Uh-huh.
choose what fabric I use. I choose the thread. I choose what I'm going to sew. I choose the tools I need. This is my space and I am in charge here. And I
Yeah.
have the freedom to make those choices, whatever choices I want to make,
Mhm.
without listening to what anybody else has to say.
Mhm.
This is me. This is my space. I think we
Yeah.
forget that, but that is a space that you can absolutely take control over. It's
Yeah.
yours. You do what's going to work best for you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And finding joy, especially in the next 4 years.
Yes.
Like sewing, sitting down to sew and making the decisions you want to make and doing things the way you want to do them is
Mhm.
almost in itself a radical act of defiance. Like, no, yes,
Yes.
I know the world is burning around me. And yes, I'm doing all the I'm calling my representatives. I'm being
Right,
obnoxious
right.
about it. I'm telling everybody I know, like, this is how I think and,
Mhm.
whatever. But like,
Mhm.
then to sit down and do something joyful amid
Yeah.
all that, amongst all that, and
Mhm.
do it with purpose, I think is like that's where we're
Mm.
gonna
Yeah.
keep ourselves sane enough to keep pushing forward, to face the ugliness when we can still joyfully create beautiful things. So,
Absolutely. Agreed. Agreed. All the
yay.
things. This is great. I'm serious about, I'm gonna have to listen to this so
I know.
can
I'm like, I need
remember
to
everything we
re-listen to it.
talked
Yeah.
about.
Like remind myself, take notes of my own episodes. But well, Jenny Kay, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
I've
My
loved
pleasure.
chatting with you and getting to know you. It's like
Yes.
when other people can talk just as much as I do, I'm like, yes, thank you so much. This helps me out, it helps you out. No, it's good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I really loved this and I can't wait for everybody to hear our episode.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. A great time.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.